like to welcome everybody to the meeting. And before we get underway, I just would like to do a bit of housekeeping, as everybody is aware, with the exit doors and the place where you all congregate should be the need for emergency evacuation is out on the courtyard out here. Doors down the hill to your right. And that covers that part of it. So with that, I will move on to the apologies. Do we have any apologies, please? No apologies, but we will note that Ian Hartshaw at this stage is not present. Logan, once he gets his connection to audio, may know whether Ian's joining or whether he's absent.
So I believe Ian's overseas. It's just kind of me.
He's an apology. He is an apology. Thank you. Okay. So can I move in a second, please? What? Yeah, Doc and NZT. Mark's there. Mark's there.
That was an apology and I'm here.
And you're there? Okay, so everybody's covered there. All right, can I have a move in a second, please, that we accept the apology from Hartshaw? Move, seconder. Are you seconding it, Ryan?
Yep.
Thank you. Declarations of interest, please ensure that they're updated if there's any changes that need to be recorded on that. Moving on to item 4, which is the public forum. I've had nobody make contact advising here wish to speak. So I'll take it that there's nobody presenting to us from the floor this evening. There is a requirement, just to reiterate to everybody on the floor, that if you do want to speak in the public forum, you are required to make contact and make the advisement that you do wish to speak.
It's prior to the meeting.
Prior to the meeting, yes. Right, so moving on to confirmation of minutes. 5.1, the Franz Josef Joint Committee meeting minutes of the 25th February 2025. February. So with that, there is an amendment being made, and there are a new copy of the minutes with that amendment made. So what was in the original document has had the amendment made that Brett Cummings, Councillor, West Coast Regional Council, will attend the meeting via Zoom, and that Andy Campbell, Councillor, West Coast Regional Council, was present. So that is an amendment that has been made to the original meetings, minutes that were sent out to everybody. Have you all been privy to the new updated minutes with those 2 amendments? No, take it as not. First off, I'll ask for a move or second to accept the amendment to those minutes, please, before we actually go on to accepting the minutes. Happy to move? Okay, so second. Thank you, Kelly. Kelly will always second. All in favour to that?
Aye.
Yes. Carried, thank you for that. So it's fixing the amendment. Secondly, we will move on to a mover and seconder.
I've got a couple of comments on the minutes, Helen.
Are you contesting the true and accuracy, or have you got matters arising from Logan?
Things missing from the minutes.
Things missing? All right, okay. Thank you. If you can read it off.
I don't think the minutes are very short for the meeting. There was quite a bit of debate about the stage 1 budget and where the accuracy grants questions to ANOVA. None of that's captured there, and that clarity or lack of clarity isn't captured anywhere in the minutes. There was a comment that ANOVA would be used far less, and that the regional council would bring matters into house and wouldn't be relying on ANOVA going forward to anywhere near the same extent. That's not captured there. And there was a commitment to get the minutes out more timely, or request. I don't know if it was a commitment, to be fair. And there was a objective to get the minutes out far more timely. None of that's captured there either. So those are my 3 points that are missing.
Do we have a recording of the minutes that were taken? Read that in that meeting. All right. So what I'm suggesting, Logan, is that a review is done of that recording to see if anything from that, those points that you've raised was taken note of or brought into the meeting as far as recommendations. And we will have to bring that back as a amendment for the next meeting, because that will require an amendment to these minutes.
Appreciate that, but to the last point about getting the minutes out more timely, if we could get them out more timely, that would help everyone's memory.
These came out how far before this meeting?
I thought they came out a long time ago.
So did I.
Yep.
So I think we agreed.
Maybe I missed them. I've only seen them in the minutes of this meeting, so apologies if I missed them earlier. I've only seen them in the minutes when this agenda pack came out.
These have been out for a wee while, Logan, so.
All right, apologies, I missed that then.
So thank you, because those steps have been made by regional council to ensure that that was a correction noted and acted on. So thank you to the regional council for doing that. But we will review those other points in the minutes and bring that forward to the next meeting. So with that, going back to the recommendation at the minutes, the Franz Josef Joint Committee meeting of 12 February 2025 of true and accurate record. Do I have a member, move for a second, please?
Just one question for you, the NZTA funding seems to be a contradiction in the way it's written. It's on page 5, item 8.1. It just says NZTA funding. MPIN confirmed there was no funding contribution. And then the very next sentence says, however, reallocation of NZTA's initial contribution for which the North Bank was being reviewed. We know the answer to it, but it's just not clear if someone reads that.
Oh,
It's page 5 and that's the top 8.1.
so it's page 5 on
Well, it's still on page 5.
confusing now. Thanks.
Page 5. 8.1.
My funding conception based on North Bank's works and the reallocation of initial contribution. So sorry, can you just repeat what you're challenging there?
It seems to me a contradiction if it first says there's no funding contribution, then the allocation of the initial contribution for the week's North Bank was being reviewed.
We're talking about this one.
That's the amendments to these minutes.
I mean, everyone around this table knows what.
Yeah, you're correct. It's referring to the North Bank twice. One saying there's no funds, the other one saying they're reallocating funds from the North Bank.
Yeah.
Which is a contradiction in itself, you're quite right.
So it's not a big deal, it can be.
Clarified,
Yeah.
so we will get clarification on that and bring that back with Logan's queries.
Through the chair, could Tom Hopkins perhaps update during his presentation about that? Tom?
He can clarify that point because it needs to be amended in the minutes here because at the moment it's a contradictory statement. Saying they have no funding and then they're saying they're going to reallocate funds from that same bank. They said they've got no funding on.
So through the chair, from my understanding was NZTA's contribution was for the south side on the NZTA stop banks, and that was part of the original stage 1 contract. And but Tom will be able to confirm that. But then they, as I said, they were not at that meeting. They were not prepared to put any money into the north side stop bank.
That's fine, Chair Haddock, I appreciate that, but in here in the minutes, it's actually something that needs to be corrected because it's a misstatement. It's saying that they have no funds available, that they'll reallocate those funds that aren't available.
No funding contribution from NZTA for the North Bank works. However, relocation of NZTA's initial contribution for works to the North Bank was being reviewed. So at that time, I believe Tom went back, that was from that meeting, to ask, whether they would actually contribute to, because we discussed that at that meeting, that the 55K corner wall along there was giving some protection. That's what I understood, and I think that's.
Mark, can you shed some light on that? I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I did just raise my hand. Thank you, Madam Chair. Probably is easier if we do deal with that as Tom does his report. But I think I agree the notes are somewhat confusing depending on how you interpret them. Our stance at the last meeting was there's no new allocation, no new funding from our part for the Northern banks, because the Joint Committee did determine that we ourselves would be managing our own stock banks and not be able to potentially get the extra funding that's we can get, well, yourselves can get from Canoa, which is okay, that's fine. So as again, Tom will report later on in this meeting, we did consider that then we needed our own contribution back, which was made around 2021, when it was a contribution to, at the time, the Provincial Growth Fund, where the fund that we put in, 25%, was 25% of the value of the works solely for the South Bank, the Glacier Access Road, the Holiday Stop Bank, and the Canavan Stop Bank. So if we are managing that work alone going forward, it was agreed that, and that's what's noted as post-review, has been agreed with Regional Council that we will take that money back and we will now manage and deliver that works entirely ourselves at whatever cost that results in, and it will be far higher than that value.
Thank you, Mark, for that. So actually, to actually make that those two sentences read correctly, we need to put in the word was no new funding contribution from NZTA, because we're talking about the current funds as opposed to new funds. So if we make that amendment and put in the words no new, and here funding contribution from NZTA, that then corrects that statement. Thank you for that, Mark, appreciate that. So that's another amendment that we made and that we'll bring back for the next meeting just to sign off on. So actually what I'm going to do, rather than actually have them as a true and accurate record, because we've got clarifications and amendments to now make, what I will actually change that to do is that we will receive those minutes in the presentation at the next meeting, where we can sign off as a true and accurate record. Is everybody happy with that? I don't really support signing them off as a true and accurate record when we've got some amendments to make and get clarification on some points. But if everybody's happy with that, we'll make that change there. So I will now be asking for a mover and a seconder that we receive the minutes from the February 12th meeting. Thank you, Councillor Nemo. Thank you very much, Councillor Campbell. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. So action list.
Excuse me, but the new light get put on.
Yes, certainly. Yes.
That bottom right needs to be bright.
Thank you.
Right, so the action list is. So we'll work through the action list, and first off, Tom, where's Tom? Tom. Sorry? Sorry. Okay, so let's. We haven't got that on the screen to show everybody either, have we? Oh, no, mine haven't been updated here either. It's really 12:42. All right. So the other thing we need to actually make sure of with the action list is that as things have been completed, we're happy to have them removed, but I don't want to lose them from sight of the overall project. So I think we need to make sure that they are filed as a point of record through the process of this whole Riverwork program. So the first one on the action list is being completed. And Daryl, thank you for communicating with Logan regarding that information. The second point on there has also been completed. That was to do with the total quantity of rock stockpile for the management of the Hamilton Wall tow rock upgrade as reported to the committee. The next one is an ongoing one which we will require an update on. I'll just try to find. Here he is, down the bed. Scott, do you want to?
So there is a report, in the next place, it's the draft stuff.
You want to run that in there? All right, so we'll roll that through to that report. Capital Program Manager for the clarification of the NZTA's funding contribution to the North Bank. We've actually just covered that, and that's an ongoing situation anyway. There is a paper again that's been presented to us tonight's meeting, so that'll be carried over. It'll be, dealt with and spoken to with one of the reports. And again, Novo's got another cover off within his report. Is that correct, Sam? Yep. The next item's been completed, establish a joint committee working group for stage 2 of the project with memberships to be confirmed. It's been completed and established. Confirmation of the date that the physical stage 2 needs to have commences by the date's not included there, it's provided to the committee. It requires the date to be added into it. It's completed. Okay. Point 8 has been completed. Logan, I'll come to you in a minute. Point 9 is ongoing, which is the timeline scope of the Line Farms River Training Works, and again has been completed. Ongoing for the timeline of Lower River Farms River Training Works. Does anybody want to speak to that now, or is that going to be spoken to during report time? Group Manager, Catchment Management. Is anybody speaking to that with the action list?
Madam Chair, you're referring to item 9?
Yes.
Yeah, so no further comment.
At this stage, the next update will be October.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Logan, you want to come in now?
Maybe we cover it later, the missing rock in action 2. Item 2, sorry.
Item 2 being.
Maybe you'll cover it, maybe it'll be covered later.
So you're questioning the volumes of rock that are quoted in the report?
Please note that all rock at the stockpile 1, Grant can probably talk to this better than me, but the rock was there, it was linked to NZTA, and my recollection is it wasn't fully returned. Part of it was returned. Brendan Russ, as you'll see in previous, 6 months ago, year comments, said it wasn't fit for purpose, and we were to get big rock. We never got the big rock back, and then it was deemed what was there was fit for purpose, but that Grant will be able to remember better than me. We did have the rock there, it was linked to NZTA. If it's not all there, it was a deal between the Regional Council and NZTA in emergency times.
I believe my memory serves me right. We've talked about this before, later.
Several times, yeah.
Yes.
It becomes a bit of a contentious thing because NZTA said, well, the rock's not good enough, you can have it anyways, and then it was put on another stopping where it was good enough. So NZTA really owed us a whole amount of the original, but that's the other rock. So it was a gift. I'm not too sure whether we need to dispute those figures, otherwise it might be in here still.
Yep.
It's just when it comes to the payout of the Franz Josef, the former rating group's expected to pay out the rock that they owned. If it's disappeared, that's a regional council issue, not a rating group issue.
But the original amount is 5,300 in total, and that's still what's included in the thing. So I don't think there's anything missing.
So what's that? You don't think there's anything missing?
We've always determined that there was 5,300 tonnes in total, and that's what's being reported here as the just rock stock that was involved in the calculation.
Are you not saying there's 3,300 tonnes there in reality?
No, we're saying there's 5,300 in total.
But then on the next page, please note the rock at the stockpile 1 was used, only 3,000 tonnes.
Yes, certainly. Please, let's put this to bed now. once and for all, because this is something that seems to come back over time.
Okay,
Next one.
at the time the agreement was reached between the regional council and the ratepayers here, our records show that there was 5,300 tonnes in stockpile here. That is what the repayment to the previous rating district is based on. Okay. Now, the fact that we've only been able to account for 3,300 tonnes doesn't affect the payout to the rating district. Okay. Somewhere there's a discrepancy. We don't know where, but the payment to you guys is being made on the basis of what was in our records as being stockpiled at the time.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's acceptable to you guys.
Well, it's to us.
Yeah.
Logan, so that you know, there's 5,300 being paid back to that.
Yeah, oh, happy with that. If that's clear, perfect. Thank you.
Moving on.
Thank you, Tom, for that. Greatly appreciated. Right, the last 2 points are the review and addressing the issue of properties not being rated correctly for flood protection rates. That's an ongoing piece of work. Is there any update from the regional council regarding that?
Peter, would you like to speak to that, please?
Yeah. So we basically, probably in the midst of changing our rates in this fund. So we're working on that at the moment. The initial work that we've done would suggest there were probably 10 properties that weren't included. There's also probably up to 1 or 2 that were double dipped a couple of times. So we're just working through that process, and once we've finished it, which will be more towards the end of August when we're just about to set our rates, and we'll have a picture that we can come back to the committee and talk to.
Wasn't it put in the press as about 35 properties?
Yeah,
And that's don't read it.
And just please run things through the chair and allow the speaker to speak.
Sorry?
What was your final comment on that?
I said that was a number that I quoted at a meeting. And
Yes.
It was more in relation probably to Greymouth than it was with Franz. So it was just my error.
Thank you for that. So is everybody quite happy with that? And thank you for that. It's a good update to have and good to know that you're actually addressing the situation. The final point on the action list is the breakdown of costs to date with the design flood modelling resource consent project management for stage 2, which has been completed. So before we actually move on accepting the action list, I would just like to check with the committee that they are happy with the information provided and the level of work that's been produced, because I think the amount of focus that Regional Council has given and the consistent lineup of work and action that's been produced, I think is actually pretty good. Certainly keen to knock every challenge off, and I'm grateful to them for that, but I just want to also ensure that the committee is, North and South committees are happy with the amount of information that's coming through.
Certainly an awful lot better on stage 2.
Okay. Right, so with that action list, I will need an indication please that the report and information noted is received. Move to second, please. Oh. Right, thank you. Chair's report. Sorry. It will be a verbal one. Look, I am very grateful for, I know it's not been difficult times working through all this, and a lot of it's contentious, but I want to thank everybody for the way they're conducting themselves. These meetings, the localised meetings you have with regional council staff. Tom, I'd also like to acknowledge your willingness to come down here and talk to everybody, keep everybody updated and have those free and open conversations. I think that's commendable too. When you look at the amount of work that's already been addressed and what's still to come, we're getting there. It's certainly good progress. And I'd just like to, have the surety that everybody will maintain their level of conduct through all this. Because we don't want to have any unnecessary, I guess there's always going to be legal discussion, there's always going to be hot topics, but let's just keep managing them the way they have been to date. Because I think that's assisting the progress that's been done and carried through. What I would also like to report on is that my conversations regarding Franz Josef, when we had Minister Jones here for the opening of the work on the stock banks, I had a meeting with him for an hour before he flew out, and I presented him with the all the works that's going to be done on the stock banks, the Tartary River, those issues, etc. And I'm feeding updates to him on the river behaviour and concerns from the community, etc. as we go forward. And I had a conversation with him last night regarding Franz Josef and where it's at, and he's very keen to get us all around the table in Wellington with stakeholders involved with the power, the road and the community. So I'm not, I know the elections are coming up, but I'm not prepared to let them get in the way of what's going to be done for Franz. The elections, well, they kind of take a back seat to this sort of thing, because this is critical. And if I don't get re-elected and whoever comes into my seat, I'd never forgive myself if this didn't get to where it needs to be, to ensure that we're going to get an end result for Franz. I don't want to see this kicked down the road for any more period of time than what it's already been. It's been going on for too long, and it's time we had the answers and got the action going with everybody that needs to be at the table. So that's really all I've got to report on, but I do want to convey my thanks to everybody involved. I commend you on the way you're all managing yourselves with this. Thank you. So that's my report. I have a second to please it. My report you received. Thank you, Councillor Nera. My seconder. Thank you, Grant. Yep. Okay. So point 8 is the update on the Waiho Tartary Avulsion presentation. Matt.
Madam Chair, Matt's apology tonight, so we have the presentation that you delivered last week.
Anyone doing that?
We've got it recorded on video.
Right.
So if you can just give me a moment to set it up, and we'll
okay, lovely. So we really need everybody to be able to see that, and they're going to be able to see it clearly up there on the screen. Do you guys want to turn and see, position yourselves to me? It's quite an in-depth report, so follow Tom through it. He will explain it very well, but I think as far as questions go, perhaps we'll check with each slide, Tom, in case, but we don't want to have this turn into a talk festival. One slide will lead on to another, but if you've got something that's you needing clarification, please ask. But we'll try and get through this because we've got a lot to discuss around this. So,
Madam Chair, could I just say that this video with the commentary will be up on our website. So if you want to go back and watch it on your own monitors at home, you can do that.
Still. Has anybody got popcorn?
I think we're supposed to break.
sorry,
Can you see down the back?
Yep.
Oh.
Double check, and I've got the sound. No, I didn't, so it's going to check. Okay. Good evening, everybody. We had hoped to have this presentation delivered by Matt Gardner, who has got a long history with the Waiho. He's got his own modelling, hydraulic modelling business in Christchurch by the name of Land River Sea, and I think most of you have heard from him at one point or another in the past. This is a presentation that we delivered to West Coast Regional Councillors last week, and West Coast District Council councillors also last week. And because Matt was unable to be here tonight, he's pre-recorded it. Ben Pascoe of Tetra Tech Coffee, who is our designer for the stop banks, with the upgrade to the stop banks on the south side. He's going to assist me with answering any questions that might arise, and we will stop. Ben, I might get come up here and you can just tell me when you want me to pause it to allow those questions to come forward. So what this presentation is about, it's about some work that the Regional Council has invested in. It's the development of a whole new model, a geomorphological model. So most of the modelling that we've done previously has been hydraulic modelling, and that just looks at water. This geomorphological modelling, it combines water with sediment, which is a big part of the way the Waiho behaves. And it's enabling, or it's intended to enable us to make much more accurate predictions about how the Waiho might behave in the future. The first thing this model has been used for is to have a look at the Tartary avulsion and how that's evolved since it developed and what's expected to happen with it over the next 5 years or so, and therefore test the feasibility of what it is that is proposed for the Havels Wall extension. Okay, so I'm going to be quiet now and hand over to Matt, and then he'll give me a yell when he wants me to pause and allow some questions. Okay.
Kia ora, tēnā tātou katoa. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Matthew Gardner, and I'm just going to give you a bit of a presentation outlining some of the morphological modelling which NIWA have undertaken on the Waiho River, and give some commentary and some thoughts around our long-term management plan for the river. So what is 2D morphological modelling? It's quite a complex science. NIWA have undertaken modelling on the river using industry standard software called Delft 3D, which is made in the Netherlands. This software solves the standard hydraulic equations, the 2D St. Venant equations, but also incorporates sediment transport. So their model is huge compared to like a typical morphological model. So it's 1,217 by 488 cells, and each cell has a resolution in the order of 5 to 7 metres. So that's essentially saying that each 5 by 5 metre grid element has an average land elevation. So it's a reasonably high resolution model for a morphological model of this type for the catchment size. Now, 2D morphological modelling, it's very rarely carried out at such a large scale. Most morphological models conducted around the world and within New Zealand are of specific areas, maybe of certain scour at a bend within a river. But because NIWA have access to their supercomputer, which they refer to as Mahuika, they're able to carry out much larger simulations than the general public. So they've carried out their runs on 40 nodes of their Mahuika supercomputer. But just for context, a 5.5 year run, so simulating 5.5 years of real-time flows, takes about 5 weeks on their supercomputer. So that's about 1 week per actual year of simulation. So it's very computationally expensive. So what is their morphological model and how do they calibrate it? So they've started the model based on actual LiDAR data which has been collected. As many of you will know, we have numerous LiDAR data sets from 2016, 19, 23, we have 2 in 23 and 2 in 24, and we've now got 1 in March 2025. So they've started their model from a previous LiDAR data set. They've run the actual flows which occurred, or what their estimate of their actual flows were, because there's no flow gauge in the river, and then they've compared the results from their model with what happened in reality. So I'm going to go through this quite quickly as I have quite a lot to cover. However, you can see on the left, we have the results of the morphological model from June 2023 to January 2024, and we can see very similar extents on the right from June 2023 to 24 based on the actual LiDAR. So whilst there are some differences, we get an overall general pattern. Our aggradation downstream of the gorge is similar volume and area of aggradation upstream of the gorge, and a very similar extent for our LiDAR. And here's just a comparison. So the red lines is a tracing of the edge based on the aerial imagery in July 2024, and a blue line is the forecast or the prediction from the morphological model. So slightly greater volume of lateral erosion has occurred in the model. However, if we compare that with our latest imagery from March 2025, you can see that whilst they were giving a slightly bigger estimate, it's not beyond the realm of what could happen, because we've actually gone beyond that already. So keep moving. So the model has then been validated. So because it's been run for a future 5 years with an artificial time series, they didn't know what rainfall events were going to occur, we can sort of use that model to see how is it comparing against what's actually happened. Is we've had the model started from the July 2024 LiDAR, but we've now had some new LiDAR flown in March of this year, and so we can compare the model outputs from sort of the end of February with what occurred in reality. So just highlighting, they've got different inflow hydrology. They didn't know what rainfall events were going to occur. But on the left, we've got the results of the morphological model from the end of Feb. And on the right, we've got the actual changes which occurred in the catchment from the start of March 2025. So you can see again, similar extent, similar patterns, a little bit more change has happened in reality compared to what the morphological model was showing. That doesn't mean the morphological model is wrong. It just means that, essentially that the rainfall inputs into the model were a little bit less in the model compared to what happened in real life.
Just going to pause here and check that everybody's following so far and ask if there's any questions.
Exactly the same as what they did in the mid-70s.
Right. Okay. Likely.
But then they had ice bubbles in it.
I think the key point here is the model is replicating pretty well what's happened over that period of time since July 2024. Okay.
So I'm now going to walk you through what the model is telling us, what this morphological model is saying. So I'm going to show two sets of results here. So the model's been run with the existing stop bank infrastructure, and it's also been run with a proposed extension to Havel's Wall. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you get the results with the Havel's Wall extension, and on the left, you get the results with the existing infrastructure. So I'm going to go through quite quickly again, but just to give you an understanding as to how this avulsion is expected to develop over time. So each one of these time steps is 1 year, so that's 26 to 27 to 28, and red is erosion and degradation of the bed, and blue is aggradation to 29 and to 2030. So we can see that over a 5-year time period is forecast within the model. Again, these are artificial storms. We don't know how much rainfall and what size flood events we're going to get in 5 years, but 5 years within the model, we lose a lot of land around here. Significant aggradation upstream of the gorge, and a very large fan starting to form downstream of the gorge, because that's all that material which has been taken by the avulsion is transported through the gorge and builds up downstream once that grade flattens out again. So the model's not set up to predict what can happen downstream from here, but we can tell you from our river engineering and geomorphological experience that we would expect the river now to start pushing further to the left, eroding in and taking more of that farmland on the south side. The other key thing we get from the model is that the aggradation along Havel's Wall and Link Bank, etc., is not expected to decrease at all. We can see that it continues the same trend that we've been having over the past 30 to 40 years. The impact of the Havel's Wall, essentially it shows that it protects more land And if we just go back one slide, you can see it a bit more clearly here. But we can see from the model that this that the avulsion was propagating further upstream, and by the end of our 5-year period, it was starting to cut in and to erode down at the bottom end of the wastewater treatment ponds. And so it's a little bit hard to tell just from the results which I have on the screen, but NIWA have interrogated the results in a lot of detail and conclude that the model is showing that within 5 years of their model simulations, the wastewater treatment ponds are seriously threatened, and that by building the Havels Wall extension, we can increase the lifespan of those ponds by 2 to 3 years, is what the model is showing. They also note that the wall would be sacrificial, and it would likely start to fail within a few years into the simulation due to the deep scarring at the end. So its only purpose is to essentially extend the life of the ponds. It's a band-aid, not a long-term fix. But it could buy some more time for planning and relocation purposes. So moving on, so just as I said, so the model is comparing reasonably well with our long-term aggradation rates. So we have designed the existing stop banks, the recent upgrades based on the average rate of aggradation at each cross-section location over a period of 20 years. And so the design bed level is based off the 2021 mean bed levels and then applying an average rate of aggradation out to 2041. So just on this graph here, the yellow line is how the aggradation was tracking against how it's been tracking since 2021, so up to 2025. And then the purple and blue lines is the forecast aggradation from the model. So what's comforting to me here is that the model is not predicting a rapidly increased rate of aggradation, but conversely, it's also not forecasting a decreased rate of aggradation. So the rate of aggradation appears to be fairly consistent to what we've been experiencing in the past. So that's good news in a way, because it means that the existing design appears to be suitable for a 20-year life period. However, again, noting we're 4 to 5 years into the lifespan of that already, so we've only got potentially 15 years left before the level of service of that stop bank will be compromised. So just emphasising that decisions need to be made sooner rather than later.
Hey, the first thing I just want to make sure everybody's onto there, the different colours, so the red and the blue. Blue is aggradation, so the riverbed building up, and the red is erosion, so the riverbed cutting down, okay? And the nub of what the model is telling us here is within 4 to 7 years' time, depending on whether the extension proceeds or not, the down cutting and back cutting of the avulsion will start to reach the bottom end of the existing Havels Wall and start to put the bottom end of the existing Havels Wall under attack. Ben, did you want to talk to anything out of those slides there?
No, I think that summed up the red and blue plots essentially. I guess just pausing here as well, there's a bit going on in this graph in terms of the North Bank as well as the avulsion. So yeah, just making sure that everyone understands this is around mean bed level, so cross section right across the entire bed at cross section 15 circled in yellow there, and taking the average. So this is plotting those average levels in the long-term trend.
Right, Tom, could I just make a quick comment? The only other thing that I would add to aid your understanding of this is that the model predictions are based on the rainfall and flow sequence of the last 5 years being the same over the next 5 years. So if in the next 5 years where this is predicting the flows and rainfall, we get bigger floods and more rainfall, what this is showing will be accelerated more than what's predicted here. Or conversely, if we have a very benign period with virtually no floods, it'll be slower. So the important point is we're we're predicting based on exactly the same rainfall and flow sequence as the last 5 years.
Got that big flood.
Yeah, thanks. Without the 2019 flood is
Moved to it was moved to the very end of the simulation to avoid it creating problems.
Yeah. So the 2019 flood is in the sequence, but of course, you know, if we had a much more frequent flooding, apart from that one flood, you know, more floods in the sequence when it'll happen quicker or slower depending on what happens. So it's an important assumption within the model to understand.
By looking out in the river, we're nearly at 2028 now. With the aggravation out by Kenneman's Knob with the gorge going down. So I think it's miles off, personally.
Tom, can you go back to the one where you had the really blues showing the, I think it's 2 slides ahead of back, is it? 1 or 2? Sorry to ask.
Aggradation with tracking against simulations.
So with that, we've got the stop bank and not the stop bank. And we've got where the water's potentially going to be flowing, but in a flood situation, what we don't know with the modelling is what that's going to look like, because the water's not going to stay in that channel on the right-hand side where it's completely red. There's not a lot of depth there between the land that's gone and the bank and the riverbed. So the water's going to flow and spread out, isn't it? It's not going to stay in there because there's a bank that's 2 feet high off the riverbed.
The bank there, so the red cut areas are where the river's cut in. I think a lot of those banks are probably in the order of 5+ meters down the bottom end. But you did right.
I'm talking about the land on the northern side. So you've got the ponds, you've got the dark green mass, you've got all that farmland down there. It's not 5 meters from the top of those banks to the riverbed. Graham, would that be right?
Yeah.
It is 5 meters.
To the farmland there.
Along here, well, that's not here, but where it is at the moment, it will be quite a big cut down. It was when I was there last year.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah,
She's the big cut.
Yeah, it would be.
That's good. 3 or 4 meters straight down with the river's line.
Yeah, and the river's down below that.
After that fresh down the day, there probably would have been half that capacity left for river rise.
The whole river was in the middle channel. So it's only because of the fresh up day, it's gone out where it is now. And in a big flood, we have to remember the river, like me and Willow went down in January for civil defence at 4:30 in the morning. We went down this bank down here, we couldn't see the river. We went down Devil, we couldn't see the river because it's a fast flowing river, goes straight. Doesn't matter how high the ground is. And so in a big flood, it's not just going to go, oh, we're going to go there. It actually, when she's on peak, she'll just run straight. It doesn't matter what ground's in it, because there's that much fall behind it.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Well, my question is, we're talking about potentially doing a Havel wall extension. If the river still wants to go south, we're still not saving down here anyway. We're only saving the ship ponds. So if we're going to spend $3 million on a bank, why are we borrowing money to shift something that belongs to Western District Council?
And didn't it just say it had a 2 to 3 year service life?
That's right. So why would we, I mean, I don't know how much it costs to do the extension, so I shouldn't quote numbers, but what I'm talking is, why should we borrow money, such a small community? It's for something that's, we've just been told it's only got a 2 or 3 this one.
And the community actually didn't want the ponds there. The stop bank was put up, not with the consent from regional council. The ratepayers had to go and sort that out through stage 1, and the ponds were there. The community wanted the ponds down the end of Front Street. I think most people in the room will know that. We now have our hands. So this extension shouldn't be a cost on us.
No.
Through the chair, I just clarify on the right-hand photo, it shows that little black line. Perhaps, Grant, you might be like that is the extension to the Havel's wall, the proposed one. And on the left-hand side, it shows the avulsion without it, so everyone's clear. But Grant, could you just point that out up there? So that little, that's the proposed extension you're talking about. On the left-hand photo, shows the avulsion without that. Just so everyone's clear on, yep.
But at the moment, Peter, the most of the avulsion is actually where that red line is on that page now.
Correct. Yep.
It is, there's a good gut out there, so we're 4 years advanced than what the modeling's showing.
This through the chair, it's 2.8 million.
Oh, so I was close then, yeah.
Carry on from Tom.
So Graham,
When we overrun budget, we'll be bang on.
Graham, what we're not saying is that, sorry, what the model's not saying is that that braid hasn't already developed. What this is saying here is how deep that braid will be in 4 years' time, okay?
Yeah.
So if we went back again in time, you'd see that braid having already developed because we're picking that up through the LiDAR survey, right? And what this is saying is, right, if that's what it is like now, it's likely to be depth-wise in 4 years' time. Okay?
Yeah, so it's 5 metres or 6 metres deep now. So it's going to be deeper, but doesn't show more than 3.3 metres deep.
Yeah,
It does max out of that.
Yeah, so that's where it is now.
Is the modelling triangle having the like grant for that?
Yeah, we'll come to that. Yeah.
Right. 91, isn't it?
Emphasising that decisions need to be made sooner rather than later. So what's the impact of the wall? The impact of the wall is quite significant. The area which I've shown here in red is the area of land which would be directly protected by the bank. Another way to look at it is to look at our minimum bed level. So this is a little bit complex, but essentially the bed level is changing dynamically through the entire simulation. It's going upwards and downwards, scouring and grading during flood events. So NIWA have pulled off some results for me which look at what's the minimum bed level over the course of the entire simulation. And this is just one visualization of that. So the blue shows where that land is higher as a result of having the Havel's Wall extension in place. So a lot of this land here is as a result of the Havel's Wall extension is a lot higher, indicating that we're providing protection to these treatment ponds. Because if this land was to scout down, we would expect that the rock walls, which are currently protecting it, would start to fail and get undercut, exposing these ponds to being attacked from the river. Now, there's one further benefit from the wall, which isn't immediately shown in the morphological modelling. And that's because it really depends on the braid alignment at the start of a simulation as to how a morphological model will behave. So I just want to highlight that if a braid alignment was to bounce off the end of that Kenneman's knob, as has happened in the past, and head directly towards the end of the Havel's Wall there, without the Havel's Wall extension, would be very likely to form an addition.
Oh. Actually, it's just buffering.
Anyone not free?
It's just a shame.
Which will only
It's a shame that we're not paying heed to Fulton's land that's also disappearing rapidly. They paid good money for the land that they are losing very, very quickly.
Of that Kenneman's knob, as has happened in the past, and head directly towards the end of the Havel's Wall there, without the Havel's Wall extension, would be very likely to form an additional avulsion, which will only accelerate the effects of the existing avulsion, so the ponds would get taken earlier. But that Havel's Wall extension would prevent any avulsion from cutting across the land this way, as it would deflect it back into the river. So that's just one additional and quite significant additional advantage of the Havel's Wall extension, which is not being shown in the current morphological modelling. So I'm now going to run through just some of the monitoring which we've been carrying out and we intend to carry on into the future. So we've been having a look at how the avulsion is progressing over time. In the most recent aerial imagery which we have on file was collected at the same time that the LiDAR was flown in March 2025. So here's just an image of the extent of the avulsion there. We can see we've had very significant lateral erosion. The avulsion has developed more and more. And then using some modern satellite imagery technology, we're able to basically upscale or increase the resolution of low resolution satellite imagery using some AI algorithms that we are lucky to have access to here at Land River Sea. And so here's just a comparison. This is showing how the river was at the start of July 2025. So I think it was the 4th or 5th of July of this month. And so we can see that we've had more than 100 metres of land taken just over 3 months in a period of relatively low flows. So it's quite fascinating and alarming to see how rapidly this avulsion is developing. But what it really seems to be doing at the moment is taking more width and progressing upstream towards the ponds. And so this here is just a wee animation, just showing one over the top of the other, just swiping away so you can see how much land has been lost. And so that's image is a really low 10-metre grid image which has been enhanced with AI, and hence you saw a few anomalies in the imagery there. I'm now going to move on to what the likely impact is on Lake Maporika from the current avulsion and the blocking of the outlet to Lake Pratt. So I'll show you a profile of the LiDAR contours shortly, but what we do know is that for Lake Pratt to have any threat of entering into Lake Maporika, the outlet of Lake Pratt would need to degrade significantly, and the lake would need to rise by at least 8 to 9 metres before any water is going to overflow into the lake. So Potters Creek is already flowing into Lake Maporika, bringing in large amounts of sediment, and so we wouldn't expect that like the environmental or geomorphological impact of that to be any worse than the existing state. In fact, we would expect the impacts to be much less, as the main sediment from the Waiho River is not going to be transferred over the high point in the land. It would essentially be fine sediments entering the lake more than the large Waiho gravels. So Potters Creek has always flowed into the lake, and much more sediment is coming from Potters Creek than we would expect to come from the Waiho. We don't see it as a concern for the immediate future, and it's very unlikely to be of any environmental concern if and when it does happen. And just to point out that Lake Pratt is currently rising and falling based on our observations, and we assume that essentially it's blocking a little bit of the outlet, it's rising up, and then once enough pressure has built, it seems to be cutting its own channel through. So it is likely to continue to rise as the river degrades, but there does seem to be some natural processes in allowing some of the water out, at least. And here's just a profile. So that red line is the location where I've drawn the profile, just showing you the lie of the land. So the lake outlet is down here. That's essentially where the lake is at the moment. And so we can see that the lake outlet would have to rise all the way up to above a contour of 96 or 97 metres. It's currently at 88 before it would spill down and be able to enter into Lake Maporika. So just a little bit of a rundown as to...
Okay, so does everybody follow the main points there? All right, it's not expected that the Waiho is going to hang a right, go north, and run down into Lake Maporika, lock, stock, and smoke and barrels. There could be, over time, that builds up enough, some overtopping of a larger lake that would be drained into Lake Maporika, but it won't be carrying the same sediment load that the Waiho does. It'll be overtopping a smaller amount of fine suspended sediments that will have some effect, but no worse than Potters Creek is, okay? So what we're really trying to encourage you to do here is, it is a risk, but it's a long-term risk, and before this one materialises, we've got much bigger problems on our hands further up river towards town, okay? So I understand everybody's concern here, but it's not what we should be focusing on right now based on what is telling us. Okay. And by the way, those that have been contributing photographs and videos to us, sending us those from aircraft and whatnot and from the ground, really appreciate that. Thanks very much. And you guys are down here every day. I come down every couple of weeks maybe. And I don't always get to go out and hear a lot. So please keep that up and keep us in touch if you see things changing. All right.
Tom, I tend to agree with everything you just said. Two things that are probably not clear in that the Pratt level of Pratt is already at 2 meters and it bounces up to 3 meters and back down to the 2. Yeah. So it's not 9 meters, it's 6 or 7 meters. It does go around, and it's definitely not the gravel that is worrying people going into Maverick. It is the rock flour.
Yeah.
You see the colour normally, not at the moment, but in some other spring, it's always colour the river. So it's the rock flour itself that actually kills things. As it's done in Lake Pratt already, it's killed all the wax, a lot of the fish. And
so Ken, I think that the point is here is Maparika is a much larger body of water than Lake Pratt is, and it won't be receiving as much suspended sediment out of Lake Pratt and into Lake Maparika as it currently does from Potters Creek. Okay.
I would agree if you can rub stuff out of the fine stuff. Eventually it will be filtered in it, and it is, as you say, it's not an immediate threat. It could happen on a massive flood that all the river goes that way, but it possibly give us a chance to rectify it. So I agree with you on that fact that it's a long-term challenge.
Thank you. Anything you wanted to add?
No, I think that's all points well made. It's the key thing here is that once the wire gets through that tight gorge, it's got a pretty big gradient down on that fan that it's building, and it's a tight constricted flow. So it'll, even if it's building up the fan that we saw above the gorge, it'll tend to cut down quite dramatically on that fan on the outlet side. Hence why we think that Lake Pratt issue is further down the track than the issues upstream, which is sort of in that within 10 years range.
Okay, thanks, Ben.
Potential impacts on the south side as a result of the avulsion. The modelling is very clearly showing, and it's as we would expect, that over time the avulsion is expected to capture more and more of the flow from the Waiho River. So more and more of that flow is going to be going down through the Tartary Gorge over time, until eventually it's likely that, at least for a period of time, 100% of the flow, all the flood events will be completely captured until that fills up. And once it fills up with that sediment and gets a bit higher, the river will go back to flicking from left to right. However, in the coming years, the model is showing that during some floods it does flip back to the left-hand side, so running down the Rubbish Dump Bank and Milton's and Others Bank. And so in the coming years, there is still reasonably high risk of some quite high velocity and high shear stresses, etc., running against the existing infrastructure. So we conclude that in the short term, at least, we do need some protection in place on the south side for Milton's and Others, etc. But we do need to point out that further upstream from there, the modelling is showing that the river is going to continue to erode regardless of the avulsion. The NZTA banks haven't been upgraded, and it is quite likely that over time these will become at risk of overtopping and quite likely to fail. So all of that land which is being currently protected by Milton's and Others will still be at risk from inundation if the river was to overtop upstream. So really put in a strong recommendation for managed retreat. What's our impact on the Tartary? So essentially the Tartary is very high risk now. There's an increased risk that the Waiho can avulse into the full area. So as I pointed out before, it could cut across further to the right if the brain alignment is right, taking out more land. And we would say that the land in between the Waiho and the Tartary, and essentially the whole area, is a very high risk in the medium to long term. So that's that area there. So we'd expect the avulsion to keep eroding laterally and that land will be more and more threatened. Now, in the long term, we would also expect, and this is based on some microscale modelling from Professor Tim Davies, that as this fan builds upstream of the Tartary Gorge, that the Tartary River itself will continue to erode and likely causing significant aggradation of the State Highway Bridge, meaning that bridge may have to be raised, lengthened, extended, rebuilt, which would likely come at significant cost also. And so I'm just going to finish up here. Just want to push one key slide here, and it's about the concept of managed retreat in relation to the Waiho. So I just wanted to really press home that managed retreat is not without precedent in this river. So I've been visiting the Waiho for my entire life. I was coming here as a child, so almost 40 years I've been coming over, and I've seen the town develop and the glacier retreat over time and the river change. And I've been working professionally on this river since 2013, when I was first brought in by the Regional Council to build a small localised model of the river for the scheme banks down through the helipad and the church banks. And as a result of the modelling which I carried out in 2013 and 14, I concluded that these motels, which were located right here, were at very high risk of flooding. My modelling was showing that with a 10-year flood event, the existing stop banks would have overtopped, threatening these motels. Now, it was a bit controversial at the time, but with some negotiations, we ended up relocating these motels. The stop banks have been raised multiple times since, and it's quite alarming when we have a look at the bed levels. So what I've got on the screen here is our bed levels from 2028. So I made this little high resolution sketch here. I'm quite the artist in Microsoft Excel, and so it's obviously not to scale, but here's my motels, but roughly 2.5 to 3 metres high, showing you approximately where the roof would have been in 2008. And that's the bed level of the river. This here is the stop bank. If we jump to the current bed levels, that's where the river currently is. So the river is essentially now at the level the roof of the motels would have been, and the stop banks have been raised on both sides. So it's quite alarming. So just jump back, 2008, 2024. And so I don't think anybody would argue that it was the right decision to relocate those motels. Now, if we move on downstream from here, here's a cross-section downstream, we can see that the riverbed is actually higher than Franz Josef itself, and significantly higher by about 3 metres higher than State Highway 6 and about 4 metres higher than Franz Josef. So if these banks were to fail, the extreme erosive power and forces in the river, it's going to be really scary to witness, and I really wouldn't want to be in the way of those floodwaters if and when they do breach through. And I showed this slide in my presentation at the time when I presented the TAG report, but just really want to show you here, this is where the bed level is at now in 2023. And if we allow for 30 more years of aggradation based on the historic rates, which the morphological modelling and all the monitoring we're doing is showing that it's not slowing down at all, that's how high the riverbed's going to be in relation to the town and the state highways. So it's really unsustainable. I know it's not in the hands of everybody who's in this room, but just really, really hope that we can all work together to make a sensible decision. Surely managed retreat is going to be preferential to large-scale failure of any of these banks and catastrophic inundation of the surrounding land. So that's everything which I've got. So I'll just hand you over to the council and those present for any questions. Kia ora, thank you very much. Kia ora, tēnā tātou katoa.
We don't need it again, no? Right.
Once a month.
Pretty grounding.
Okay, any further questions on any of that? I think from my point of view, what that's intended to do, in part at least anyway, is set the context for the rest of the agenda. Okay, the other papers that we want to present to you, and one in particular for decision making, and that's the item about the Havels Wall extension. Okay. So I think we're going to move on from.
Matt, that's really appreciated. Oh, yeah, it's pretty grounding viewing, isn't it? It doesn't get any easier no matter how many times you actually view it. Is there any questions or anything they want clarified from what they've just seen? Okay.
Well, actually, Chair, I actually asked at the presentation the other day of the Technical Advisory Group and Matt, because there has been quite a lot of discussion about knocking a hole through the end of the Waiho Loop, and they reinforced again that they considered that it wouldn't make any difference. The river will go left or right. So I asked that question because that was one thing, and especially on one of those slides when I seen on the left-hand side, the loop's not very thick at that point. So that has been, it's been sort of out in the media a bit, and people have commented and different people have said to me that's a solution, but I did ask that. And Tom, you might have heard the answer to it. They said you'd have to dig down a long way and it might not do anything. But that was, I asked the question just for my own peace of mind. I'll share that.
You'd have to obliterate the whole loop. There would be any assistance.
Yes.
The problem with that straight line, as you're talking about, is correct, because it's at the top of the hill. So the Waiho goes like this, so to stage it. So you actually have to build a solid wall both sides of it to make it work. Back in the 70s, as long as I can remember, they talked about that, and that possibly would have worked in fact. I don't, that'd be much help.
Tom, when you presented to us at District Council, you did say that the NZTA stop bank is now at a critical situation as far as the risk went.
I wouldn't put it at a critical situation, but I would say.
Can we just have some quiet, please? Sorry, so everybody can hear Tom.
So in October last year, we Matt did another piece of work for us where he looked at the available freeboard. So freeboard is the difference between the design flood, okay, in this instance, the 1 in 100 year flood, and the top of the stop bank. I'm talking about it simplistically here. On the north bank, post the upgrade, we've got a reasonably consistent level of freeboard and an allowance for aggradation above the design flood. On the south bank, the crest levels are all at different heights above the design flood. So the outcome of that piece of work was for the Glacier Road stop bank, that was where we want it to be, at in the region of 2 to 2.5 metres with freeboard. The NZTA stop banks, so Canavan's and the Holiday Park stop bank in the region of 1 to 1.5. The line bank on the rubbish dump banks, that's the critical one at the moment. That's got the least amount of freeboard available around that 0.5 metre mark. The unlined bank, soon to be line bank, is better off at about 1 metre. And then once you get down to Milton and others, we're looking good again. With the 2019 section, we've got upwards of 2.5, 3 metres worth of freeboard there. Okay, so I think what the presentation was saying is, while we've got a bit of a relief valve for the south bank out of the avulsion at the moment, there's nothing changing above the avulsion. Okay, those rates of aggradation are continuing to rise. or to carry on as per. And so there is a vulnerability around the NZTA stop banks with that lesser amount of freeboard, and they haven't been upgraded as yet. But as we'll talk with Mark, is he still here? And how are you going for time? Actually, you've only got 10 minutes, Mark. This might be a good time to bring you in before we move into the stage 1 project update, before you have to leave. It is intended to do some further work to those NZTA stop banks over the next 12 months or so, including a lift to the bridge as well. And I'll hand over to Mark here, and he can talk to you a little bit more about that and how we're proposing to achieve doing a better job than might have been the case if we didn't hand that money back that they contributed to stage 1. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you've outlined it very clearly, and I can't actually add much more. But yeah, we are committed to lifting the Bailey Bridge this year, and obviously in turn then the approaches to that, both on the State Highway and into the Glacier Road, and with that the rock protection necessary to make sure the river again just stays in its channel, doesn't outflank the bridge. And also we are committed to raising our stop banks, the Glacier Access Road 1, the Holiday Stop Bank and Canavan Stop Bank this year, as needed, as Tom indicated, that the levels of the stop banks at current do meet the 1 in 100-year design level, but it's just that we don't have the necessary freeboard above that you might need, freeboard being that sort of contingency level above the design level, just for unexpected events that may occur in flooding. The particular freeboard typically is measured and needed for bridges where you might get branches blocking the river, and so obviously that could cause undue effects on the capacity of the bridge. And obviously if you get any branches under a bridge, they gather more branches and logs, etc., and reduce the capacity. So it doesn't quite work the same way with a stop bank, but nonetheless we are committed to trying to get that freeboard equivalent to what we've got, or what you've got yourselves on the North Bank, so that the system is fairly symmetrical both sides. The money we're committed to putting in is around 4.5 to 5 million for the Bailey Bridge lifting. I think that'll be the 4th time that it's been lifted. I agree with what Matt said. You need to look at the river levels. I remember seeing the original bridge, which I think was a suspension bridge back in the day, like the Cook and Karingarua. I've seen helicopters fly under that, and now we're obviously got a river bed level which is way above the state highway. So we are committed to keeping the existing route, but equally we've got funding available immediately from Q4 this year, so this time onwards, to join in with Westland District under the master plan to look at also then the longer term options for realigning the state highway as may be needed.
Thanks, Mark. So just to clarify, you're talking Q4, so you're saying that the last few months of this year that work will be progressed?
So that will be the start of our work, which is another team, a sort of a design planning team, to sort of hopefully work with yourselves in terms of where the master plan might go, and that funding will then roll also into next financial year as well, and within what we call our NOTP period, our 3-year block of funding.
So we won't necessarily see the bridge raising in this financial year?
Sorry, no, if I'm confusing things, it's 2 things. Know that the bridge raising and the stop bank raising this financial year, we hope to start on the ground just after Christmas. So the physical work to immediately raise the bridge, its approaches, and the Canavans, holiday stop banks as needed, that will be done this financial year. The planning work to look at the longer term option for the potential for route realignment, that will start this year as well, in tandem with obviously your lead on that master plan work.
Okay, and just as a point on that, I think we'll need to have a discussion, and we're happy to have that offline, is the impact that that's going to create, being that it's peak tourism season. So we'll further that conversation because road delays, time delays and stuff will be serious.
No, absolutely, yeah, and we'll be very mindful of obviously the timing of that, and some of the work starting there won't immediately affect the road network and obviously access, etc. It will be working to do the construction of the piers so that we can get in there to lift the Bailey Bridge, and then obviously we'll be timing the lifting of that Bailey Bridge ideally at night so that it doesn't affect access across it through the day. We just obviously concerns about the noise on any tourism motels nearby, etc.
No, thanks for that, Mark. That's great because it just equals the really good communications we've had through Knights Point, etc. as well. And it's really pleasing that NZTA are prepared to work that way in the protection of the tourism market in Westland. So I appreciate that, but look forward to having further conversations because I think we can actually, you know, once you've got some plans in place, take that out to the wider community so that they've got assurance they understand the plan and they've got the confidence and assurance that the season will progress as normal and as expected. So thank you for that.
Through the chair, just to clarify, Mark, that when you say this year, you mean the financial year to 30th of June 2026?
I do for the Bailey Bridge and the Stopbank works, albeit our funding is able to be rolled over. So if we didn't commit that work in that time, we can still we'll be carrying on and completing it.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah, Mark, the question about emergency works needs to be done below Kenneman Stop that we let you guys know 4 months ago. The tow rock's all gone there, as you know, below the bridge in that first spur. When will works be done to alleviate that?
Yeah, my understanding is, yeah, that there's some work to the revetments we've done upstream of the Bailey Bridge, and the work to the revetments below is planned and going to occur in the next month. So that is also planned and separate to the work I just mentioned.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
any further questions for Mark? Thank you very much for that, Mark. It's greatly appreciated that we can get that update in before you had to depart the meeting. So appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all.
So reverting back to the report that Matt created and presented. The recommendation is that the committee resolve to receive the report. Can I have a move and a second on that, please?
I'll move it.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Graham. All in favour? Right, so next report is the capital project update, Franz Josef stage 1. Scott.
Join Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the report that's being prepared here just gives an update of where we're at with the project, and a lot of even in the discussions with Mark Pinner, we've been working through quite a lot of the closeout items to establish or get the project to a point where we can go through project close. Probably key thing to it is around the contract that we have with the contractor. Has no DPX liability period in it, and there's no second portions at the moment. So the point of the contract or why it's still open and PC hasn't been issued, is that we're trying to resolve these issues before we give the final practical completion certificate. So as we described, the works pretty much were substantially complete in December. We carried a walkover and completed the DPX inspections. The contractor completed those, and then we carried on with reviewing the survey information, and there's been quite a lot of review against the surveys with the LiDAR and the press levels of the link bank, etc. So we've been working with the team just to reflect that against the previous LiDAR, and also where that sits in relation to the modelling which you've just seen from that. So all of that's sort of been happening in the background, along with Ben and his team at Tick Street Property working through the stormwater issue, which we'll speak to separately. But also we've been completing that works at the heliport. So that was part of the as part of the upgrade of the bank in that area. There was some additional works to be carried out there, and that's been complete. So works that we're working on, obviously now that we've got all the modelling results, we've checked all the levels, the contractor can produce the as-built documentation as required. We've also been working with the council's operation team in terms of preparing the asset monitoring scheme, which is part of the resource consent conditions. And as part of that, we are aware that we need to issue that asset monitoring plan to Senate Hotel Group as part of the resource consent as an affected party, and as well as this group, we will get a copy of that report once that. So once we've done the practical completion, it will then be handed to the operations team, which has an independent engineer which will do that monitoring on behalf of the council. As I noted before as well, we were working on the stormwater design, and we've been working through that, and we've got some more details that I can talk to on that. Sorry. Okay. In the financial report, for current date, we're currently sitting at an expenditure of 10.891 million against the original budget of 12.291 million. I've given it just a summary table there. We've allowed some budgetary figures in there to complete the remaining works, and that budget sitting at basically 11.08 million. With the conversation that we've just had with Mark Pinner, we worked through there about the reduction of that scope and removal out of the stage 1 project, and I think that was the confusion from the first sentences, that the south side works that were included in stage 1, not the north banks. So we've now got to a point where we've got a forecast cost to complete of that 11.08 million. I've also, as part of that, if we reduce that, I've tried to provide, and on the screen, Tom's put up the over simplified version, that there will be, if we get to the forecast final cost, that there will be an underspend of about 1.2 million, of which will refund the NZTA contribution of 658, which will end up reducing the rating district loan by 550,000.
Under the Kanoa funding requirements, is it?
So it's set up differently to the RIF funding. So this was under the IRG,
yeah,
and the IRG money has all been paid out.
Right, okay.
So if I can just summarise here, you had 4 separate work streams in scope. 4, 5. Church to Heliport, Link Bank, Heavens Wall, and NZTA stop banks. We haven't been able to deliver all 4 of those. With the budget that we had. So to keep things under budget, we've de-scoped the work to the NZTA stop banks, which will result in a roughly $1.2 million underspend on the project. What that means is that we can do 2 things. One is refund NZTA the 659,000 that they contributed to the project in the first place, which will allow them to do a better job on this current lot of work that they've got planned for the South Bank than they had been able to afford to previously. And it also means we can reduce the expected value of your loan from 1.9 million to 1.36 million.
Yeah.
Okay. So while it's been a bit of a rocky road to get to where we are, and you've got a couple of guys sitting around the table here that have picked up the original project, and this lot in particular work to deliver it to the best of their ability within the parameters that were set at the start, I think we've got a pretty good outcome here in the finish. You know, your loan balance for this piece of work won't be as high as had been budgeted for in the first place, and we will still get the outcome that we were looking for right from the start, with a reasonably coherent and consistent level of service on the South Bank.
North Bank.
On the North Bank, sorry.
Yep.
As long as there's been no compromisation of work.
So So just to be really clear here, that we've found the invoice from NZTA to Regional Council. The invoice for that $659,000 was all for rock to go on the South Bank Stop Bank upgrade. Hence the oversupply of rock under the contract that we've spoken to you about previously. So all of a sudden, all of that was making sense. And one of the things we've had to resolve is what to do about, with stage one, is what to do about that oversupply of that rock. And we've managed to reach agreement with the contractor to use that rock in stage two at the stage two rate price. Okay, so it's been a bit of juggling, but I think we've got there in the end, and we've got a pretty good result for you guys at the finish. So thanks for your patience while we've worked through all of this. I know it's been a bit stressful, and there's been lots of misunderstandings and, you know, talking at cross purposes. It has taken time for us to get to the bottom of it all, but I think we're there yet.
Tom, got great result to have 550k, 30% in his budget being drawn down by locals, and great to get that NZTA stuff not only clarified but sorted financially as well. You mentioned in your presentation, Scott, if we can reach the forecasted expenditure to go, so there's 190k to go. Yes. How confident are you, or was that just a?
Yeah, so the biggest
phrase.
Yeah, that's the biggest unknown out of that is the pricing of the stormwater outlet.
Yeah.
So once we have certainty around that, we will then be in the process to be able to up that.
So the 90k for the 3 other budget lines, then you've got certainty around.
Correct. I think there's some contingency in that as well.
And then can we release reporting and see if. So
we'll have a final number, yeah, once we've done a final count.
Thank you.
Logan?
Yeah, Tom, thank you, Helen. You talk about the stage 2 price for the rock. Is that going to be higher than the stage 1 price we got locked in the rock at? Why are we paying?
No, it's not. It's comparable. Yeah.
Comparable, being higher or being lower or being the same?
Lower, being lower. Yeah.
So we're paying less for stage 2 rock than we paid for stage 1 rock.
Correct.
We're more important over there.
Beg your pardon, sorry, I missed that last comment.
We're more important on that side.
Yeah, and just the $12.2 million budget on the screen, that included the NZTA banks on the south side, correct?
Correct.
So the total budget you've de-scoped, but if you're talking like for like, the budget wouldn't be that, so you didn't actually come in under budget, correct?
Correct. There was some overspend on that, yes.
On the north side, yeah.
While we're showing coming under budget, the reality is for what work we did, we come in over budget.
Yes.
Yeah, so we should be being honest with ourselves, we come in over budget, correct?
But we got the Kanoa funding, we actually know it was probably an 80-20 split rather than the 75-25. Yeah. We got all the Kanoa funding and we haven't had to pay for that. So we should be quite grateful for that.
Is there any risk we have to pay it back because we didn't actually keep our part of the deal?
No, Scott has advised no.
That's great news then.
It is. Well summarised, thanks, Dale.
Any further questions?
No further questions.
Any further questions on that report? No, go away, Scott, because you've got the next one as well. So the recommendation is that the committee resolve to receive the report by the mover and seconder, please. Thank you, Dale. Seconder? That's the person. Thank you very much. All in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Funding stormwater between Link and 55k banks. Scott, the floor is yours again.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't.
Sorry, Logan, I presume you've got no questions? Thank you. Thanks, sorry, Scott.
No problem. Thank you, Madam Chair. I haven't prepared this as a report, as a presentation, rather than just the paper to talk to. However, we do have, as I said before, Ben Pascoe, the copy who has worked on this. This paper is a summary of the findings that came out of their report. Basically, there is a summary of the rain event, the location of the ponding, and one of the points to note in here is around the stormwater network that is contributing and distributing it out into the Halley Point. So it is being tracked behind the NZTA, between the NZTA bank and behind the link bank. As part of this, we looked at a number of different options that were in here in the report. There was 5 options that got put forward in the report, and I'll describe them as best I can. But one was to look at rerouting all the stormwater away from the current areas. The other ones were to put a piped outlet through the bank. There was also a look at a longer term solution, which is to engineer an outlet further down to the Waiho River. There was also another option to look at an engineered outlet all the way to the Tartary stream, and also another option which was to look at the pond, just to pump the pond over the bank in a time when it was affected. So parts of what we looked at, particularly around the 2 more cost-effective options being the pumping and also the pipe outlet through the wall. The pumping was considered that we would need to have permanent pumps on site, or at least located them at the top of the bank. They would need to be refueled. There's a whole lot of other issues that may come with that. And basically, we put this paper towards to council. And council looked to thought under the project and within the budget that we had available that the pipe solution through the bank would be the best option.
Based on the proviso lowest cost option.
Correct. Yeah, within the budget that we had available. Some of the sort of circa figures that were bantered around, particularly in some of those other engineered solutions, particularly like the Tartary stream, were in the sort of 1.7 to 2.5 million in a very high bracket there. Of what that might be without even a design solution. So there were, again, the other parts of what we were looking at as an overflow, and then also running behind by the wastewater treatment plant, which is actually how we would do a pipe solution further downstream, which would then sort of contribute to going back into the Tartary. So they were higher in terms of costs. Yeah.
It's just a shame that this wasn't thought of beforehand when all the community was saying this is going to happen.
Well, it's a design error, isn't it?
Yep. Just and following up on that is this 350,000 for the remediation in the budget. That's out of the Kanoa budget, out of regional council's own budget.
Total budget.
It's in the total budget, so it's coming out of the overall funding for stock banks.
So the 100,000 that's currently that I spoke about before, and that's left to spend in there, is what we're allocating out of the original project budget to come to that resolution.
Should
So funding that, well, that's what I'm wondering, because funding that's been allocated for river protection work, should it be going to remediation, which as would have been actually addressed at the time?
Remediation was what was in the original budget, not remediation of what the current issue is. That remediation of the stormwater issue was in the budget of 350,000.
For stage 1.
For stage 1.
Stage 1.
It was already in stage 1, not stage 2.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that if that had been addressed when the stock bank was built, it wouldn't be coming out of that budget. It would have been actually built with a protection as a mechanism for that stormwater.
That's what I can't understand. It was in the stage 1 budget, but we haven't spent it.
Correct. We're forecasting a spend of 100,000 to do that work.
But it's going to cost us 300.
No.
Why? No. What?
That's the biggest thing.
Yes.
We already had 350, they reduced it back to 100.
Like expensive culvert for 100K.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit more to it than just poking a pipe through a bank, okay? Penetrations through a stop bank are the weakest link.
Yeah.
All right. And it includes dealing with the potential for seepage, and it includes the flat gate and the excavations associated with it. Okay.
So you got here that it's short term, so
Yeah, yeah.
what's going to happen? Who's going to wear the cost or whatever when short term's over and we're still got a problem?
Everything here that you're listening to is short term.
Yeah, but so this can affect us.
Yeah, but irrespective of that, it's, you know, yeah, it's a problem that's there, but
We might be letting them off with a short term issue. We might
So-
talk about later on.
Well, I just wonder where the liability sits. You know,
So-
it's not.
Can I speak to this, please? The first point is that link bank needed to be located where it was to provide the protection at the tenant. Okay? So that's the first priority. Second, issue here is that stormwater point of discharge was on borrowed time anyway. Okay, because the riverbed was building up to the point where it was starting to back up. The stormwater discharge was starting to back up. And at some point in time, further down the track than is the case now, it was going to become untenable anyway. Now, by locating the link bank where council has, it has accelerated that issue. It's brought it forward. Okay, it was going to happen anyway. Now, why the allowance or drainage from in behind or behind the link bank back through to the Waiho or somewhere else wasn't allowed for early on in the design, I can't speak to. What you are looking at now is the difference between us putting a pipe in now and a pipe in while the bank was being constructed. All right, so yes, there is a bit of extra cost associated with having to dig back down and put it in rather than putting it in when the bank was built up in the first place. That's the difference. Now, moving forward, Brian, you're quite correct. The town has issues with the location of the oxidation ponds. It also has issues that weren't immediately apparent, but are now very apparent about the point of discharge for stormwater from the southern half of town. Okay. So again, what we're doing here is relieving or lowering the level of risk associated with that ponding stormwater and high intensity rainfall events like we had in November, while the parties concerned, so that's regional council, district council and NZTA, because this receives water off the state highway, work together to come up with a longer term solution. And I'd suggest that it's all packaged up in the wider issues that you have around town here associated with the river. Okay.
So simple solution is to fast track the relocation of the wastewater system, which won't say lawns because it won't be, it'll be system. And then the pipe can, the roadway between there can be cut down in a trench parallel to the stop and can go straight back to the lower down. So it won't be a big cost. Yeah. So the pipe will be in there for a long enough.
Yeah.
Option.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So, you know, another mildly unfortunate little sticky mess that we've had to navigate our way through, but again, I think we've got a solution and a way forward.
I just don't think we should be including it in the new budget when it's.
It's not in the new budget, it's in the existing budget. Okay, there was a line item that we don't know the basis of because the staff that put that line item in there aren't with us anymore. So we're still working to use that line item, but at a reduced cost. Okay, so 350,000 was the original budget.
Yeah,
so we're proposing to do the 100,000 thereabouts. That's right.
Have you got 300?
Not just about it.
Right. Any further questions on Scott? Right, I have a mover and a seconder, please, we resolve the report be received. Thank you very much, Graham. A seconder. Next down. All in favour? Very good. Right, next is the capital projects update, Franz Josef stage 2. Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some good news, obviously, the last meeting we spoke quite a lot around getting started to secure funding or secure the Kānoa funding. Post-meeting, we progressed with the completion of the design of the line section of the bank, rubbish dump bank, that was then tendered, and can confirm that we commenced the construction of that part of the Kānoa's timeframes that were in place. That work has been completed for that particular section of the bank, and we are due to, I think, tomorrow to carry out a post-completion inspection of that body. So it's good news that we've obviously started the first section and that's complete. In parallel to that, we also, for the unlined section, we had completed that design and also went through the tender process, and that contract was awarded, and those works are currently underway. The next portion of work, which being the Milton and others, we have carried out some additional site works, site investigations around what was happening there, based on the feedback from the Joint Committee and particularly the working group, and I'd say as well that's been a great place to talk about what's happening in the projects and also get feedback from you guys as well. So that's been working really well and much appreciated. So sort of pass my thanks on there from the team. In terms of that, we also found that through those investigations about how the rock was constructed, the thickness of that rock, and then also around where we were insufficient, in particular the toe rock of the 2021 section of the bank. So that's the piece that's done up to Ratanong, that last piece there. We are in the process where the detailed design has been completed. We've issued that and had discussions with the West Coast Regional Council's Chief Engineer reviewing the design, and we're currently in the process of preparing those contracts. The contract has been prepared. We're just about to finalise the procurement plan for that particular section, and looking to put that out to tender very shortly. The Havels wall extension, we can speak to at the next part, but we saw the presentation obviously from Tom and Ben and Matt. Obviously, depending on the outcome of that, we would have to complete the design works, etc. Should the approval be given to carry on through there. We have been providing, particularly with the working group, the details of the funding and the claims to date as per the requirements under the Joint Committee path there in terms of the funding. But we have included here a summary of where we're at to date on each of the sections of the bank against those costs to date. We've also given a summary there of the funding source and the split of that 60-40 overall. Anyone got any questions, comments?
Oh, okay, just have a wall, where's the consent for that at?
Which consent for which part of the wall?
Okay, so I know, yeah, well, no, yeah, so can you consent yourselves a stop bank, which is an extension of something that potentially may not have had its consent signed off?
So we're working through that with the regional council consent team at the moment. Our view or the angle we're taking with this one is the length of the extension is in part intended to work within the permitted activity rules. Okay, so the 10% additional volume that's allowed for under permitted activity rule 20. We may require a variation to the existing consent for the diversion that was installed further upriver to enable the upgrade of the Havels wall itself. So that's where we're at with that one. Those are the angles that we're taking. Okay, so for the extension itself, We believe we can work within the permitted activity rules for that, but we need the consent to confirm it. And we may need a variation for the diversion to reinstate that, to get the river away from it while we're installing the extension, should it be approved to happen. Okay.
Okay. There.
Trivial amount, but are we seeking cost recovery for the 49,000 on the NZTA work from them, given they're going to go do their own thing now?
So the way this works this time round is, rather than drawing down in advance, we draw down retrospectively with the RIF. And the way it works is we tell them what was spent, and then they pay us 60% of that. Okay, so it doesn't matter what it's on, they'll give us that 60% contribution. Okay.
Yeah, my question.
Yeah, no, so I can answer that. Yeah, so in terms of the upfront costs of getting the agreement across the line with Kanoa, there was a portion of works that were carried out in that. So there was a cost in order to prepare all the documents, prepare all the design budgets, etc. And in relation to that, that was then apportioned across each bank. And once that had happened, that got put, as we've done the financial accounts to do a better job of it, we've been tracking things against each particular section. So that money just went, okay, we'll put that across the 4 sections. So Rubbish Dump Bank, Milton Others, Havels, etc. Kanoa have confirmed that they won't allow NZTA access to that money for that section of the bank. So it'd be hard to attribute that to NZTA if they get nothing out of it.
Okay. Thanks for clarity. Supplementary on the budget in general, obviously not in the forecast costs. We've got no savings or no overruns predicted where costs.
So yeah, so there were contingency allowances made within each section of the bank, and currently, as forecasted, we don't look to it as an overspend of that. In fact, we're looking at the opposite, that we're under those at the moment.
And we're going to, whoever sits around this table and the this group meets, will get a update on where those positive savings could be. Thank you.
So to give you an example, for Rubbish Dump Bank at the moment, we're tracking roughly 400,000 under budget.
Is there a reason that's not showing in the reports and papers tonight?
No, we were reporting it against it being fully expended. So that was
cool. Okay, good to know.
Yeah, and Milton and others, we're looking at about half the work and half the cost. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, can I just add to that? We are also aware that there were requirements and requests for, like Tom said before, about the uplift of what was the line section of the bank to provide additional freeboard. So there'll be a question at the point once those works are complete and have more clarity around that there is available funds. The question will be asked about whether that progresses or not. So those questions need to be put forward in the future if the funds are available.
A little bit of a wish list there of items that we can feasibly bring into the project if we're looking at being underspent. But that would require consultation with you guys and an endorsement from you to go to council to do that. Okay. And that one is probably the highest one on the list, is a bit of a lift on the upper Rubbish Dump Bank.
Okay. Any more questions? No. Right, resolution is that the committee receive the report and move the secretary again, please. Thank you, Grant. Seconder. Councillor Hassan, thank you very much. Now in favour. Right, next report is the proposed Havelsfield Stop Bank extension. Tom, speak to this, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I do, I just wanted to echo what Scott had to say about the working group that we've got in place for stage 2. I think it's been a welcome initiative and welcome change, and it's been really good having you guys on board and the support from you with the work that we're doing. So much appreciated and looking forward to continuing to work with you on this one.
You trying to acquire votes here?
The nomination in the Chris.
You've got 16 hours.
I think that would result in me having to quit, wouldn't it?
Yes, I'd vote for you, Tom.
Okay, so I think I'm not going to muck about too much with this one. We've had the presentation from Matt earlier on. I'm well aware that there's been quite a few, or plenty of discussion within the community about this paper and this proposal. You've heard from Matt his assessment of the situation and the timelines over which we expect the avulsion to develop or progress rather, and the level of risk to the lower end of the existing Havels wall, and therefore property and infrastructure that's critical to the town to the north coming under increased threat. The proposal that we're making is to proceed with the extension of the Havels wall to buy further time to allow for that planning and implementation of relocation of those critical services away from the area that's in threat. I do well and truly understand it's a very difficult decision. Everything that we've got in place out here is effectively temporary with a lifespan of between 4 and 20 years. So I don't really want to speak to this much more. I think I'd like to hand that over for discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. Who wants Grant?
Yeah, people in the community come to me about it. My thoughts are no. It's value of $2.8 million for 3 years protection of that. We've got bigger things to worry about for the whole of town. And that's the feedback I've been given, not just from the south side, but people on the north side too. They've gone through enough crisis with rates going up where we don't need this extra burden on us.
I think it's just too big an undertaking for just such a small community to, it's such a tourist destination, which is a part of the chain for the whole country for tourism. And for us to spend $2.8 million, for a tiny, tiny community with some ship ponds, I just think that there must be some government help to be able to shift them if that's what it takes. It's just such a huge amount of money. It's something that's not guaranteed.
Yeah, and I know what you're saying, Kelly, and I had that discussion with the Minister of Tourism when she was in Hokitika recently. And it's something that I'm pushing through the international visitor levy, that it looks at not just the wastewater ponds, but the bigger picture of Franz Josef with that. But primarily, first and foremost, is the wastewater ponds, because it's not right that the community of Franz takes on the burden of being a tourism town, which exacerbates the need for a solid wastewater system. And it's an incredibly different proposition between what your town needs as a town versus as a tourism destination and the numbers that you host. So yeah, I fully support that. The burden is unbearable that you are carrying something for a large population than what you actually have here. But it's how we manage this.
There's no contribution from the district council in here at all. I mean, it's either 60% from the government and 40% from the rating district. There's no contribution at all from the district council to protect their ponds. And this beggars belief that a little community like this have to fork out a district-wide problem. We're going for a district-wide problem, not a community-wide problem. It just is not fair. I'm not going to vote for something that's going to burden this community with more debt. We've already been through the ringer getting to where we've got with the works we've done. I just can't see how we can afford to fork out another $2.8 million that's going to be gone in 3 years' time. At least the rock work we've done is kind of permanent.
So I tend to agree with him. It's in the past, not not everyone will be aware that all six storage systems in Western Province all lumped into one, so it's all paid for everything. So sometimes we pay for Haas when they didn't upgrade, sometimes we pay for and so, yeah, we seem to be missing out from this. And if we could somehow fast track the relocation or the renewal, is a better word, of the wastewater system earlier, as in fast track it within 3 years, it would be far better for that 2.8 million put in there. And as the modelling says, it may or may not be at risk coming back to the Harbour walls in the next 2 or 3 years. So you've got that three years, and I was going to bring up the tourism rate as well. That's the most obvious solution to this, but not to extend the wall, but to relocate that problem. Because then when you do that, we can go back to what I was talking about before. We can get rid of the stormwater issues as well. Sanitary gangs, we live their land.
Thanks, Monica.
Well, especially party land, not the whole lot. But the point being is that, yes, I agree with all the people here and people that spoken to us from the are the same. It's very much like having a student plan and have the whole university come use your toilet. It's just not feasible and not sustainable. So we do need help on this. And as you pointed out, Helen as well pointed out, this is not just a Western problem. It's not just a West Coast problem, because the tourism is a link through to the other side as well. So it's a whole South Island issue. So it should really be a central. It should come from central government. And what are you going to say?
Yeah. Sorry, but it is good to get.
So pretty much of the same opinion that to burden the community with $2.8 million additional loan for something that might last us 2 years just doesn't make financial sense.
Sorry, can I just clarify something for the record? So that the total estimate for that piece of work is 2.8 million. The local share would be 1.12 million, and the government share would be 1.68 million. Okay.
You're not really helping sell it, unfortunately. Trying.
Making sure
it's still not a bargain.
Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Look, the reason the Regional Council got Minister Jones down here was to actually show him firsthand of the problems that are here. And you might recall in my speech to the Minister, I said it was unfair and unaffordable for the local community to actually have to pay that 1.12 million. And I spoke to him for an hour beforehand of that fund, and the government should really front up, because it is, like these people have said, a wider issue. But the Minister was quite clear. He said, do not come asking for money, come to me with a plan. So that was, what the take I got from the Minister. But the question I've got is like, I won't be voting in this. I'm going to refrain from voting because I don't think it's a local community thing. But, you've got to look at what happens, what is plan B, and how long, like, has Westland District Council got a plan? Have they got the land acquisition? Have they got a plan for actually doing them? Because what happens if the wastewater system's taken out in 3 years' time? So I know you're I'm not voting on it, but something needs to happen soon, because if it starts degrading and that's a 3-year plan, what is plan B? You shut the town down, or do you just let the water go down I don't know. That's the only thing I'm sending out as I'm happy to, I've told Helen I'm happy to work in and try and get any funding with the government in the term I'm here, because I'm not standing for re-election only a couple of months, but I'm more than happy to work in as close as. But the Minister was pretty clear. Don't ask for money, come back with a plan, So.
Yeah, but in all due respect to that, the plan is for us to build a stop bank. I mean, Minister Jones is all about stop banks, and I mean, that's his department. Maybe, but is it about ship ponds? I don't know. We're not asking for. Why should we be paying for a stop bank to protect a ship pond that we don't know?
Could I make a comment, because I was at the meeting before the Minister opened the flood wall as well, and when the Minister said come with a plan and not the money, what he was saying is a plan for the town and what we have to do with the ponds, with the south side, etc.
We had a
but-
plan and the government said no,
Yeah.
so what, so we just all pack our bags and move?
So that was an sorry, that was an invitation to come to Wellington with a plan, and then the money might be considered. But don't come asking just for money, come with an agreed plan with the community, so the government doesn't have to.
But I don't see why the community should have to be a part of a plan for shifting ship ponds. Can
Okay,
you see
that's-
what I'm saying?
Look, I can cut through this because I've had further conversations with Wellington, and what I've said is that we're not after a handout. I want the right heads at the table to resolve this once and for all, not just for the wastewater funds, not just for the stormwater, but for the future of Franz Josef. The river's different.
It is different.
It's ahead of us on the right-hand side. It's in a different phase to what it was 6 months ago, 12 months ago, next month.
We're comparing apples with oranges.
Yeah.
Ship ponds and rivers aren't actually the same thing.
No, they're not. But so the problem is far more diverse than just simply letting go on the south side or moving Franz Josef. So my conversation with the minister is I want everybody at the table. I've got agreements to have everybody at the table that needs to be, which includes NZTA, Power and everybody else. So we get the right heads to get a resolution on this. But yes, we've got to look at the big picture because I have to agree, to me spending, the local share is 1.2, but it doesn't matter if it's 500,000 or $2.5 million. It's a short-term fix, which is a big chain around anybody's neck for something that may or may not be needed to protect the ponds. To me, I kind of think we're better off to see if we can get some time reprieve from Wellington on that. And hopefully within the next 2 months, have some form of commitment from Wellington to addressing the situation and
Well, maybe
fast
the
track our
Western-
process.
Yeah, maybe the Western District Council is the one that needs the plan, like this is where we potentially shift them to, this is what we potentially.
Well, that's what we're looking at, Kelly, but
Yeah.
as I'm saying is that we need to fast track that, to get things removed
Yeah.
to stall that, which is where Minister Jones becomes quite valuable because he supports that, but the tourism minister is also on board with this and fully understands the situation. So look, if we fund the whole damn situation for Franz Josef, we either spread that right across the coast, Westland for rates, or we straddle Franz. It's not fair. You guys have been hit with something that's repetitive. Every time we increase the stock banks, it doesn't matter which side, it's only a short-term fix because next year you're going to have to put some more money in, apart from maintenance, we're going to have to rise them again and again. It's not sustainable for anybody, let alone a community of this size. So we've got to get a once and for all fix for this that takes that pressure away, that people can live their lives without being saddled with that financial burden. And yes, we've got to do our share, which means we've got to fast track the ponds and where they sit and what they do. But I would like to see if we can go to Wellington and get some reprieve on that, because is there a time restraint on spending that 2.8 or getting that part of the project done? Are we under the gun, like we have been for all the other work, to have a process in place, a certain date?
Are we better, just a thought at the top of my head, are we better off getting that funding put aside as emergency bloody works? If that really starts hurting, and can we have that funding available to deal with it when it happens?
It's a good point. It's a good question.
Rather than throwing money at it now and then it may or may not be needed.
And that's probably a fairly good touch to go to Wellington with, or to Kanoa.
Let's have some sort of.
We have no contingency funds, should something be needed. For the switch.
Well, that's government funding that's there, that's actually ring fenced. I don't know what it is, Tom, it must be around 1.8 million or around that sort of figure. That's the government share. So maybe you actually look at seeking that used for like emergency works, like you're saying, and if the minister, I know he said stock banks, but this is a special case, so that may be the conversation to get that money. Then it's not costing the community their local share, where it's only that 60% the government have already allocated as part of that 5 million. Yeah, so
the other thing, they might have an appetite for not spending it too if they potentially don't have to.
The other thing is there's no maintenance budget line there on this extension. I mean, it's going to get absolutely hammered, and we either write it off or we maintain it.
Yeah.
It's going to be bloody painful.
And that's again a bigger cost to go out for anybody when it can get hammered and be gone tomorrow.
And that's through the chair, who's gonna, like, you're gonna build a $2.8 million stock bank, and you're gonna, after the first flood, watch it getting washed away, who's gonna Make the call to when the maintenance will get stopped.
Because that river is still gonna wanna keep going around the end of it.
Yeah, it is.
Until it decides it doesn't want to.
The tech group did tell us that milk mountains was stuff. They got that wrong.
Peter, if I can address your plan A or B, of course, this is plan P. There is a suggestion on a more serious note, that we needed a certain amount of funders as part of we're supposed to pay for all of these bills, pay off the loan and the maintenance, and we've also got to put money aside for, what's the word they use? Well, it's
reserves.
Well, basically it's reserves, yeah, which we've never used in the past, but it's supposed to be there. So the alternative is to use some of that money, stockpile rock at the end of the current Hamilton bank, leave it there, just stockpile it on that down the side. Then the Waiho will take a long time to nibble through it. But in the meantime, so you're not spending 2.8, you're spending,
the government,
you better tell us, 200,000 or 300,000 maybe, just dumping the rock there, not placing it, just dumping it, and the Waiho will take a while to nibble through that. We'll be able to see it coming, but at least it might still be there in 5 years, whereas you put it out on the proposed extension, it's about the one part of the plan we all agree that it will disappear sometime in the next 2 to 7 years. But if you put it on a heap, it's possibly still be there.
Good idea, Grant.
So the diggy can retrieve it anyway.
if you can find it, if you can find it.
Yeah, it's been years trying to find the big stockpile in the middle.
So the only thing I can add at this point is that there is a contract between West Coast Regional Council and Kānoa, and there are terms and conditions within that contract about what that money can be used for, when it must be used by. So all we can do is ask the question. And then, you know, I think, notwithstanding Graham's comment there, we do rely on the likes of Ben and Matt to give us the best possible advice about value for money. Logan's been keen to chip in with a comment about the idea of just trying to train the river away. So there are a range of other options, which...
Tom, that's not my comment. That's definitely not my comment.
Sorry, Tom, did you finish?
I'm quite happy for Logan to explain what he's got in mind.
I'm just asking, is there a halfway option we push a gravel bank up? Grant said a couple of meetings ago, the river comes up and down quickly in a flood. They're not long floods. So as a non-rocked bank, the regional council's previous engineer was quite keen on them. Is there a halfway option where we push a gravel bank up, knowing we may have to rebuild it regularly? So not training the river away, but pushing a gravel bank up that we don't rock. Is there a middle ground here?
I kind of would have thought the rock concept would have been middle ground because it's not so movable, is it?
What gravel bank have you seen hang around, Logan?
None, but if it survives a flood and survives a year, we can do it again. If we're only buying ourselves 3 or 4 years, it might be cheaper to use a bulldozer and push the gravel 3 or 4 times. It won't last forever, but if it lasts a flood, that's all we need to do is last a flood and we can rebuild it.
No, it won't last.
If we do that for 100 grand rather than 2.8 million, then everyone's happier.
There is an alternative solution to Logan's suggestion, and that is to use the big dozer to river train. So not go up, but go down. I mean, the river's doing it itself, but if it appears like it's going to change, then you possibly could get in there. We did spend 100,000 a week with the big dozer, and the result of that was that the river at the bridge dropped by a metre because we straightened the river. It didn't last very long, and we're not expecting this to last very long, but 100,000 gave us a year and a half, I think, last time, and this river's doing most of the work for us. But if we spent 100,000 every year and a half, it's better than 2.8.
Tom, what is the criteria with this fund? Because I know, as I said before, there's been time restraints. on implementation of work. So what is the situation with the Havel Wall?
I can't tell you off the top of my head, I have to go back and look at the contract.
You don't know whether it covers everything or is singled out?
I think we've already looked into this, that it doesn't cover river trade.
That's
No,
correct.
I wasn't meaning that. It's more like with Kanoa, you've got a time frame to use the fund or commit yourself to the work you're doing. That's what I'm wanting to know.
So my memory of it, and please don't quote me on this, is
Not as if you're in a public meeting.
end of next financial year, I think, so.
Right, okay. Peter, I'm
I've got a question for Tom.
sorry, Brett.
Yeah, I've got a question for Tom. When they talk about you're going to train the river away from the Havel Wall to build the extension and all the rest of it, which will be used Kanoa funds to shift the river. Where are you going to shift it to? Are you going to shift it down the south side, or are you going to just shift it out into the river a bit? Because we know the river's got quite a hump in the middle of it. And are you going to shift it from at the bridge to put it down the left-hand side, or is he just going to build a wall?
So the intention, Councillor Cummings, is to replicate what was done to upgrade the Havels Wall. But it would have to be located much more further down river. And it's just intended to be temporary, to get the river away from the bottom end of Havels Wall while the extension is built. Okay. Now, Scott and Ben, the diversion that was built for the upgrade of the Havels Wall, how long was that in place for, and how many times did we have to rebuild it over that time frame?
I believe it was probably in for about 18 months, and we had to redo it, I think, once when we came back 23 copy.
There's another question I've got is some people think that by pushing that wall up the first time, loosened up the river, and that's why the river went down there and took out the avulsion, because this all happened about the same time. Are we better not to muck around anymore on that side and get the river over the other side? Because if we start stirring up the riverbed, the Waiho is going to come away and take all that gravel away. I just think we really need to think about where this is. There's a couple of options, and we need to think about which is the best one.
What I'm picking is that there's not a lot of appetite in the room for paying out that money on that stop bank. Okay, so I guess what we need to look at, and Peter, I'm interested in your opinion on this, is with going to Kanoa and even the minister, it needs to be a very good case put forward. It's not just a matter of we just take this and put it there. It's got to be a very solid case on the situation at hand, and that the short-term protection offered doesn't give us any guarantees. The community would prefer to potentially put a stockpile of rock on the end or whatever, or hold that money as a protection mechanism for any sort of slip or fall that appears in any of the stock banks. Is would they consider that? But we're still committing to all the work, but can we use it in that line while we as district council address the ponds under urgency, but we also get that plan and that conversation going in Wellington?
I believe so, Neil Ash, and I think, the critical part is actually, your council actually coming up with your time frame. And I know in your long-term plan you've got 2034, which is 9 years out, but obviously that has to be earlier than that. And once you've got that time frame sorted out of what your proposed time frame would be, then that's the conversation to Wellington to say we've got X amount of years before realistically you can achieve that. And then it needs to say, well, it needs some temporary options in place from the government, and we have got that government funding as long as they don't expect the local share. And then which I don't believe that it should be the local share paying for that. And if the government is still prepared to pay that, to get that by that time, for the benefit of not only the West Coast, the whole South Island economy and the tourism, then you put in the mitigation measures, whatever the experts would suggest, whether it's bulldozing or, but I would suggest, if you could put it back down the south side after the Milton and the others wall work's done, then you would, from the bottom end there, then you'd buy that time. You have to find that time.
So that's a bloody big trench into the south side now.
Yeah.
Yes, I look today. Incredible, man. Anyway.
In saying that, we've seen it do this before, it'll still go back to the south when it's ready.
As well. As well, just the carnage that it can create in the interim of doing that. Right, so I know there was the intention to have a vote on this have a wall tonight. But the sentiment around the table, no appetite. Do you want to do the vote to refuse it and move the recommendation from there, which would be the more appropriate way to manage it? So you can do a vote on proceeding or not with the Havel wall.
I'm abstaining, the election.
Noted on the grounds of it's a community decision.
Yep.
And same. Yep, because I do need to quantify the reasoning for that, so I appreciate that. And it is very much a community thing as opposed to us, I believe, having the right to push anything on anybody.
Apologies, Helen, if we vote no, it's Logan. If we vote no, what's the implication? Will it come back to us for another decision? Are we voting no permanently, or are we voting no? We're
voting no, Logan, for the proposition that's on the table tonight, which is to proceed with the Havel wall extension. But from that, if it's a negative, we will then make a recommendation from the committee going forward on what we've just discussed prior to this conversation now.
So it may come back to us again to vote on the same issue again?
It could well do, depending on the answer from Kanoa. There may be a midway conversation, we don't know. But what we're saying is we want to be able to talk to Kanoa and see what sort of appetite they have for this, but we're going to have to put in a very solid pitch, and that will include the impact that this can have on South Island wide for the tourism component. It's that normal big pitch that you've got to put in to cover your butt. But until we know what their appetite is for this, we don't know where that's going to go. But yes, something's going to have to come back to this committee for another decision, depending on that outcome. Darryl.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just want to advise that after you decline the recommendation, you come back with the other recommendation, which I think I know which direction it's going to go to. That would be entirely inconsistent with the terms and conditions of the before the deluge funding and the RIF, and the Kanoa officials and the bureaucrats would say, no, that's inconsistent with the terms and conditions right across the country and of the Kanoa funding for the flood banks. So what I'd urge you to do in your second recommendation is it's got to be a discussion or an approach to the minister who administers it, not the officials at Kanoa, because they will say, no, it doesn't fit. Thank you.
Yep, no, thank you for that, Darryl. Absolutely, it's got to go to the minister. The Kanoa need to know what the position is as well. Grant.
Can I make a suggestion? I agree with anything you say, but just for us as representatives, when we're having this vote, can we have show of hands from the floor? It won't need to be recorded, just as representatives, we need to know what people want.
No, happy for that, because really it's just a motion of performance, I guess, if you want to have it that way. There's nothing intentional to, it's just acknowledging what you all feel about this. So there's no other intention other than that, and that I'm happy to accept that. So, okay, so the recommendation is, apart from receiving a report, that the Havel wall extension be put in place, be actioned. Show of hands in support of that. And I'll look to the floor to see if you support your committee in that vote against it. And I'll take it that nobody in the room supports the Havel wall extension. So the recommendation is that is declined. An agreement from everybody. And I take that as being the same in the room. All right. So with that, we will record that there was a strong vote against the Havel wall extension proceeding. And from that, the recommendation will be that a conversation is had with the minister, with Kanoa being advised as a secondary to the decision tonight, and a proposal is put to the minister on that funding, the government funding, and how we manage this situation going forward.
I think I could word it actually, Neil, actually, like West Coast Regional Council and Western District Council jointly and urgently approached the ministers to utilise existing government funding to enable planning for the oxidisation pond relocation.
Yep.
One second.
Yeah, right. So you've got, do you want to do that?
Right for regional council.
Peter, can you repeat that? Because he's got, I know he's got it written down in white.
Oh, yes, mostly off the head. West Coast Regional Council and Western District Council jointly and urgently approach ministers to utilise the existing government funding for measures to allow time for the oxidisation ponds to be relocated. I think that covers options. What would be?
Would you say wastewater treatment?
Wastewater treatment plants.
If you lock yourself into oxidation pond, you might be.
Yeah, no.
Wastewater treatment plant options.
Options. And we had a mover and a seconder. Grant.
I'll second that.
Ben Kelly, moving and seconding, that is the recommendation. All in favour of that? I would say that's very strongly carried. Thanks, Peter, for that. Right, so what we will drop back to first is the other point is to actually receive the report, because that's the only thing they put on that there. So can I have a move of some of the please that we received the report, and then we'll move to the next one, next Dale, Graham. Right, so thank you very much for everybody for that. I know it was a sort of an issue that nobody was looking forward to actually having the discussion tonight, rather than it being negative. But I think we've come to a reasonable decision here that is suiting the community, and we will certainly go on in that and do the hardest job we can with that. Yeah. And it was good to thank you to the community for your support and your representatives here at the table with that decision.
I'll just say from me on the working group, thanks to you guys too. We're engineers and all that for this. We have been a pain in the arse for you, and we have been listened to, so thanks for that. And Wayne, pass on to Doc. It's good to see the work get done up the Glacier Road for that. And it's, we've been pushing that for a long time, so it's good to see actually finally work getting done. Just hopefully the TA can sort their stuff out, and happy days.
What's financial statements?
Thanks, Graham. Right, moving on to the last report, which is Franz Josef and Lower Waiho rating districts revised financial statements. Peter.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Peter.
Yeah, Peter, I'll get Peter to talk to us, but if I can just introduce it. So this is an action arising from the last meeting, the AGM, where there was some feedback from some of the local representatives, particularly I believe, that the accounts that were presenting didn't appear to be in order. So has worked closely with Peter here to go back right through to 2017, 2018, to redo the reconciliation. And so Peter's going to talk to you about the updated or revised and updated position that he's landed on with company.
Yep. So basically, Kim and I spent some time looking through both the Waiho and the Franz Josef financials. So this is basically the outcome from it. You can see the 414 in June 22 being put aside for the refund that is underway. So that's part of that process. This is a little bit complicated, and I talk about complicated because when these were done in the past, there was an estimate put in for a loan.
And I think that was back in the day when the council took the view that a shovel in the ground and we would start rating for the local share. With the IRG projects, you basically get all your money up front from the government. So there is no local share until basically the project is almost signed off. So, and Scott talked about that a little bit earlier. But in saying that, in 22-23, we rated for 122,000 as far as 123,720 for a loan. And in 23-24, that number of 221,437 should be split almost similar to the year before, where it's 123,720 and it's 98,501. So that 221 needs to be split. Now, the only reason why I talked to that, I'll clarify in a minute. If you then go 24-25, we didn't actually rate for a loan at all. And the only thing we rated for was basically maintenance on the scheme. So the loan fell off then, and then basically in the next year, we're going to bring it back. The only reason why I talk about the fact that we had a targeted rate for the loan, so the two, if you add the two 123s together, you get to about 247,000. So that was, in theory, targeted rate for a loan, and the rest was based on maintenance. So my view is at the moment, I've got it all flowing into the prudent reserve, which obviously gives you a nice healthy balance of 354,000. But I guess there's a decision around if the loan was rated for, should that money basically be allocated to the loan? And so you'd have 247,000 of money up front that you could put against the loan that we're now starting to rate for. So there's that. We have taken legal advice around that, whether just because it was a targeted rate, does it have to be used for that? So there is some flexibility there. You don't necessarily, if you're targeted rated for a loan, you don't have to apply it to the loan. It could be applied somewhere else, but obviously it's still going to be within the Franz Josef rating district. So that's probably the one thing that I just want to put out there and just say, you know, that's something that we maybe can have to think about, how we want to apply that money at the end of the day.
Down in balance at the moment.
What's that coming?
That's a worse question to ask. I'm all for paying down debt.
Well, Tom talked about the fact that our Franz Josef one, we're going to be about 1.3, and then you've got the low IHO loan to add into that as well. The two schemes get combined, so at least you've got a starter on starting to erase that.
The closing balance on the loan at June 2024 was 292,000. Yeah.
And of course, that will have moved on because we will have rated it for another year.
Yeah.
So. Thing is, it's just basically what I'm looking for. I think if you want to have a discussion around it and decide, it doesn't have to be today. But there's one of those things that we need to sort out.
I think the other thing that we need to be clear about here too is we've had some discussions about in the last few months, discussions about the
Microphone, Logan.
Stop sucking that lollipop.
He's super on silence now. Sorry, Tom.
We've had a couple of conversations about your targeted rate for maintenance and trying to build up your prudent reserve and so on and so forth. So what this outcome does mean is that your prudent reserve, as far as the maintenance type activities is concerned, is not as healthy as we were reporting it previously.
Okay. Only by about 20-30 grand.
Oh, it's not that bad. It's not
bad.
All right. Sorry, I'll take that back. All right.
Yeah, because that was part of that, splitting that 221 into payments and the other things.
So Logan's was on the voice before with some type in what interest rate we're paying on the loan. And I missed the last part of the message.
What we get in the bank.
Okay. Right, okay, so thank you, because Kim, you've worked with them on this, haven't you? Yeah, so thank you very much, Peter and Kim, for that. I know it's been a burdening issue for some time as well.
Comfortable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Next week, because you're involved with it.
It's gospel.
Yeah, so no, it's good to have that because it also gives the assurance and confidence from everybody here that things are where they should be.
In regards to the prudent reserve, I've been always advocating to pay off your loans, but to keep getting reminded by the powers to be that the prudent reserve is there for a reason. If something comes or goes wrong, we have to have that correct, or something along those lines.
Get prudent reserve.
So something to do, we won't be able to access it for that, the insurance.
Or the NEMA claims, Yep.
Is it, that's correct.
You've got to have either, like you've got to have prudent reserve there, you've got to have funds that can do that part of the work, or otherwise NEMA, or an insurance policy in place. Otherwise NEMA won't front up with their share, which is generally 60% of a claim.
So I'm playing devil's advocate basically with myself, saying that we don't really have a choice. That money has got to stay there. I think I'm correct from what I'm hearing.
That's a discussion you guys need to.
No, but I don't know if it is a discussion. That's what we've been told we have to have.
Yeah.
Well, you've got a bit of both. Both is, just depends on how quickly.
But when do we have this discussion?
We need to have a discussion. I mean, it's a matter of just when we apply it. So we can have that discussion in the next meeting. I don't think we need to do it.
Let's do it tonight.
Yeah, do it tonight.
Let's do it when it's 6:30.
You know, you're gonna have money for.
Yeah.
We do that. Yeah, we got a balance there, what, 354,000?
You're a good flow, you think that, don't you?
I know, take it straight away.
Maybe you will have eroded some of that. This year. But you did.
Maybe it's not the best choice of it.
I think there's a bit more to think about, isn't there, with that as opposed to.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. So have that time, take that time to have it, and then also ask, I think, Peter, any questions. If you want any clarification or any more information on that with you.
Yes, it also.
Yeah, we'll find it, because he was part of the working team that did the job. But yeah, you've got to get your heads around what's sitting in the reserves and what,
It's what we need to do.
Yeah, what you need to do to protect yourself. So have that conversation, work that out, and then we'll come back and make that decision.
Not for this meeting, but we did have a reserve, and we're still waiting for it to come back.
Well, I was going to bring that up in general business.
Right, okay, so we will finish that report then. So is there any further questions on that revised financials? Because Kim wants to have the floor for general, so so the recommendation is that we receive that report on the financial statements. So I can sit over a second, please. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Pete. Sorry, she had it.
Fine, Helen. Yeah, Helen.
Right, that's cool. Right, so we'll move into general business. Everybody's getting to the end of their tether for the evening. Progress on refund to former Franz Josef rating district and October elections and joint committee composition. Okay, I'm not sure what the first and the second one's referring to, but Kim?
Well, the first one's about the prudent reserve funds that are actually held at the moment, that 414,000. It's really just a housekeeping note I'd like to suggest to council. I've received one letter for our assets, and I should be receiving at least four different entities. But please don't use New Zealand Post.
Yeah, I know they're bad.
Yeah. And I've only got 20 days to respond.
I sent out about 83 letters.
I've only got one for.
Okay. If you've got my email address.
Oh, I have. I just
harass me
to say,
Point noted.
I didn't do well enough, so I don't know that I had to harass you. Sorry.
Oh, you can read mine.
That's the point.
So that's noted, and I think we've had that discussion here before too about post that's not here. It's been at every other meeting I've been to.
Update to email, please.
We could use this as a process of doing that.
Yeah.
And then we'll have everyone's email address, because I actually am asking people to email back the banks, bank payments. So at the end of the day, I will get your email address.
Yeah.
So I will harass you later about.
Okay.
So some princes from our media will start. Sorry. Shut up.
So it's the end of night ramble. Okay, so you having that covered? Okay, so the next one on the general business is October elections and joint committee composition.
So that's a item I've had put on the agenda. Couple of things here. I did want to acknowledge that this is the last meeting for the current triennium, and the composition of the joint committee may change. So I just want to acknowledge the contribution that elected members around the table have made, at least in my time here, if not before. As far as the local representatives are concerned, that part of the membership just rolls over. But what I would do, I would like to do is encourage anybody who is thinking that they might have done their time and they want to hand the reins over to somebody else, to please let us know, because there is a nomination process that we can and will run if we've got vacancies that we need to fill. Okay, so that's all I have for that on.
They might want to make that decision once they see who's sitting in these seats.
So that's something for the next meeting, i.e. the AGM, which will be probably early next calendar year.
Is it the next meeting?
When is the next meeting?
We haven't set a date, but the cycle that we're working at the moment, Kim, is roughly around what our preference is to have the AGMs for all rating districts early-ish in the new financial year, once we're in a position to be able to report on the previous financial year, but also to help inform annual planning for the following year. So it's kind of in that first third year, which I know Dale hates. Now, we can't do that this year because of the election cycle. Okay, so our AGMs will be like they were this calendar year, probably February, March, somewhere in there.
And the only thing we may have to do is come back for another meeting, depending on discussions with Minister.
Yep.
So that could see us come back to an earlier meeting.
Yeah, I was going to say, because leaving it till.
No, we can't. No, it depends on what the narrative is and the outcome of that, and we will have to bring that back, I would imagine, under haste to get through Christmas. Yep. So, we will.
Because I'm not being, but new people might not know anything about what goes on, so I think we need that.
Because flipping elections, it's the last thing we need, because we don't need it to be getting in the way of this and where we are, but democracy. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when Tom says AGM, the AGM is to report on the financials that have been audited from the last financial year, and then to set the budgets for the next financial year that we need to adopt as council by 30 June. That's the important thing to do at the AGM, and decide on your prudent reserve levels and all those sorts of things. And as has been our practice, if we need to have other joint committee meetings at any other time on any other matters like one we just talked about, we just do that anyway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gerald. So just to clarify, your terms of reference provide for 2 a year, but there's nothing stopping us having more than that. We have an extraordinary like we did for the special consultative process in November last year.
Just keeping everyone informed.
But we'll also bear in mind that the next one could be once carving started, so we'll be there in mind, but putting that into being definitely too late.
Way too late.
We'll have a conversation about what's going to suit. Okay, so that's cool. So the next thing on there is just a public forum.
Can you add general business first?
Oh, I thought we just covered that off, what was noted here.
Oh, yeah.
You've got more general
Yes, I
business?
have, Helen, that's right. Anyway, thank you. Look, I'd just like to say, everyone here, look, seeing I'm not seeking re-election, I'd just like to explain that when I came into the chair's job, I picked up a shit fight, and I wish I'd never, if I had known what I was going to pick up, I probably wouldn't have put my head up above that, but I did. And firstly, I'd like to apologise sincerely to the whole community for any grief and stress this whole process has caused. But the Waiho is a special river, and the Waiho will have its way. And I think the Regional Council had an obligation to bring that paper to you all, because what's going to happen is something that none of us can probably stop. So I just apologise again for the stress and concern for the community. But it had to be come out. And secondly, I'd like to thank Daryl for actually getting there. When we actually came, there was no financials. I remember standing in lots of rating district meetings and people complaining. There was no financials. So in that time, Daryl's got the team led. Tom, firstly, secondly, I'd like to thanks Daryl for that. Tom, you've brought professionalism and you've brought the community together. So I thank you sincerely for that. I think you're working with the working group, and you've got everyone on the case here now. It's really good. And Peter Miller, the finance team of the council is really good, and the community have a right to know where they are with their finances, and they didn't, and none of us did, So even the councils, we didn't know where we were, and we're still picking up things at the moment. We're finding that are historic things, but I think we're nearly at the end of the list. And Scott, and the Novo team and all those engineers and that have worked, that the community has got protection for the north side for a lot of years, and at least we've bought some time for the south side. So thanks to everyone that's been involved. And finally, the committee and the working group, it's great to see everyone working together, and I only hope that the working group and the whole committee can work on with the new councillors that are come to the table to see this whole project through. It's not easy for the community, and but there's still a lot of challenges ahead. So just thank you for that.
Thank you, Peter, for that. Thank you very much. That was very well said, and thank you for your contribution, because I know you stepped into the position not particularly willingly, but yeah, it's greatly appreciated that you did, and that you've held things in a very steady manner. So thank you very much for that. And I guess it's actually the same thing from all of us sitting here at the table with the elections coming up. I think the rest of us are all standing again. Ash in a different capacity, he's standing for the regional council. Yeah, it's basically our returns in your hands, I guess. But it's not something that we walk out of here tonight and that's the end of it, because we could potentially be leaving. This is something that we live and breathe with you guys every day, and we're very, very focused on that. So I don't think that, if I don't get re-elected, I will be ensuring that whoever takes my seat will be well introduced to the situation of Franz Josef, and I've already had a conversation with Minister Jones, because I do not want to be removed from the involvement. I want to see this through. As long as me, I'll still be there. So there's no reason to think, don't vote for me. That was really silly thing to say, wasn't it? Yeah, so is there any other general business or anybody else from the public wanting to speak while there's an opportunity?
Sorry, it's Logan here, not from the public. Just, is it possible the next meeting we can update on the medium to long-term plan? Like, a lot of these issues feed into the plan. I appreciate what you said at the start, Helen, that you're off the minister, etc. We'll be into a central government election year very soon, and then nothing will happen for 6 months before and 6 months after. If we knew better what that plan was going, whether money was likely or unlikely, that might help a lot of these other discussions and kind of firm people's minds up and make medium-term, long-term plans at a personal level.
Yeah, no, I hear you, Logan, with that, and that's fully understandable too. So to me, this is all going to be locked in and loaded under urgency. I'm also going to hear in the weeks about Knights Point from NZTA, from Wellington, I should say. So there's a lot of conversations going on regarding Westland and the future and government funding. So, yeah, it's, to me, there's no time. Things have got to happen now, which is why I've been pushing as many buttons as I can for partnerships and conversations and assistance. So as much as I've gone to Wellington and said, look, this isn't about money, it's about putting us on the right track. I mean, ultimately, it'll move towards the fact that yes, we do need financial assistance with this, but it's not the way you go. You don't go asking for money straight up because you get told no. So you find a better way of actually going to the table, which is exactly what I've been doing. So I am working under haste, Logan. Yeah, and I'm certainly not going to be sitting back on my laurels because elections are coming up. Elections are taking a back seat for me. Yeah, so I know that you're planning and everything sits on this and the outcomes, and you've been sitting midway to nowhere for a long time. It's too long. So yeah, all I can promise you, Logan, is that I'm not going to take my foot off the pedal. I will keep going.
I appreciate, Helen, you're not, and that sorry, wasn't meant to be a criticism at all. It was just
meant to be
an update likely to end up. You know, I know we don't know, and you don't know where it's going to end up, but just a more of a status update and likely outcome.
If I've got anything, I'll come back and update the community, and whether it's I come down and let you know I'm coming down, or whether the team comes down, what's updated there as well. You know, let's just see what I get back, what we get back when we go to Wellington collectively as well. But we'll keep you updated. That's got to happen. It's your information. It's not ours. It's yours. You know, that's the thing.
You can hear the cows.
No, has anybody got anything else? So if there's nothing else, I'll declare the meeting closed then at 8:55. And thank everybody for your time and attention tonight. And thank you.
I didn't have some tea tonight.
Speaker out.
Yeah.